Yeah, we can get those for you. We can even email them to you if you just ask for this.
We'll be getting started in about 1 minute, please. Ashley, what's your dog's name?
Ren and Phoebe. Ren and Phoebe, like the bird.
Ren
Bird and the other bird.
and Phoebe.
Nuthatch and Chickadee.
I like it.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because there we go.
Okay, everybody, it's 7 o'clock. I hope they can hear me at home because I'm shouting, because I have to shout into the mic. Anyway, welcome to our last official meeting of 2022. And we'd like to open the meeting. Well, first of all, let me say that we would like to begin our meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we are gathered is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. I ask as we go through our meeting tonight that everything be conducted with respect, dignity, patience, and charity. So with that, we'll open with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. We're going to have Ren and Phoebe start us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'm going to go ahead and sit down and let them take over. No.
Thank you.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Oh, did you say roll call?
Yes. I said roll call, please.
All right, good evening. Commissioner Walter?
Here.
Commissioner Werner? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson? Here. Commissioner Stanley?
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Here.
And Mayor Lewis?
Here. Before we go to our announcements, item 1 under new business, unless there's objection, is being request that it be pulled from the agenda, and if there's no objections, it shall be. Thank you very much. Okay, announcements from the city manager, who just got back from a 2 weeks of being out, so his brain is probably scrambled today, which it would be.
It was a busy day, thank you. Yes, first of all, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody. And also getting this opportunity tonight to say farewell to Commissioner Walter. We're very thrilled to have had the opportunity to work with you. And you've truly been a pleasure and have learned a lot, and looking forward to continuing to work with you. That being said, the offices will be closed on the Monday after Christmas, and then the Friday with the Christmas Eve, and then the following day, Monday after New Year's Eve, or New Year's Day. So those weekends, we have the holidays for the city staff, and so wanted to make sure that the public knew that City Hall is closed on those days. Thank you.
Announcements from the city clerk.
Yes, I have meetings to announce for this week, the week of December 19th. The Act 345 board is going to meet, and that'll be on Tuesday, December 20th at noon in the training room, which is on the second floor of the Governmental Center. On Wednesday, December 21st, the Arts Commission will meet, and that'll be Wednesday, December 21st at 3:30 p.m. in the committee room on the second floor of the Governmental Center. We're recruiting for a number of boards and committees. So individuals who are interested in volunteering to help make city government work, particularly for the Local Officers Compensation Commission, Downtown Development Authority Board, or Brown Bridge Advisory Committee, are strongly encouraged to contact the city clerk's office to talk about those opportunities. And then just a few community updates. Due to staffing shortages, the treasurer's office will have customer service, in-person customer service hours from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for the remainder of the year. There are other payment options which are published on our website. The city manager touched on this, but just to give specific dates, the governmental center will be closed on December 23rd, 26th, and 30th, and also on January 2nd in observance of the upcoming holidays. And then, of course, now that we've got snow here and more on the way, we want to remind residents and businesses to please keep their sidewalks clear of snow and ice for safety and accessibility for all. And if you have the opportunity, please help out your neighbor and clear things for them. We have a number of full-time, part-time, and seasonal positions with the city, and those can be found at traversitymi.gov. And then lastly, I just want to remind everyone up here to please speak into the microphone, and also for those in the room, project your voice, because there's no speakers in this room for folks in the audience to more easily be able to hear you. And that's all that I've got. Thank you.
Yes, I'll give the second reminder. I've had a number, I had folks from LIAA reminding us to please really speak into the mics. I did get an email last week that the folks at home can barely hear us, so project your voice, however you got to do that, so it'd be appreciated. Ms. Walter, would you please join me at the podium? Okay. Here, why don't you get over here? This is a family deal, whether y'all realize that or not. First of all, Ashley, it's been a privilege. Yeah, let me get my tongue going. It's been a privilege to serve with you for this last year. I'm sorry I didn't get to have the pleasure of the first 2 years, but part of that was COVID, so it wouldn't have been nearly as much fun, which you have already shared that it was pretty tough. She's been a great communicator and thoughtful commissioner. She embodies what is truly meant to be a public servant. So I look forward to working with you as a county commissioner, because she's not going away. And she's going to be a bigger voice for a wider span of authority, and we're going to miss you here, but we look forward for your presence at the next one. As a custom that Benjamin started, and he's letting me do this instead of, somebody else. Here's some words about you that your fellow commissioners, I didn't say anything nice, so they didn't put my word down. But anyway, your fellow commissioners, people from the city manager's office, the city attorney's office, and others said about you. You're thoughtful. You're conscientious. You're deliberate. You're a character. Now, I don't know if you're meant to, you are a character or you have character. I'll let your daughters figure that one out for you. I hope it's a little bit of both. You're principled, willing to question the status quo, tactfully tenacious. Yeah, I got that one. Real, smart, kind. You also spark positive discussion for our most vulnerable citizens. And my word is called genuine. When I first met you probably 3.5 years ago when you were getting ready to run, I remember we had a conversation. And I asked you to be one thing and one thing only. Ashley. Nothing else. And my last year being able to work with you, you have been Ashley, and I appreciate that. With this is a little token of our appreciation of you, the City of Traverse City, to Ashley Walter, City Commissioner from November 2019 to December 2022, given in grateful appreciation for your dedicated service to the citizens of Traverse City. We appreciate your willingness to serve and to continue to serve. Thank you. Also, let's make it quite clear. It's not just Ashley that served. Her family served with her, because there was nights that she wasn't around to help with homework. Maybe that was a good idea. So, but anyway, and just not being home and then other meetings. So it took all of you to make her being available to us. We give you our thanks too for that and for your all sacrifice. And we appreciate that.
Can you hear me okay? Well, I'll just speak a little loudly. So a few words I wanted to share after a little over 3 years of service to Traverse City, most of which was through a pandemic. I stand before you now about a quarter inch shorter, 15 pounds heavier, 15% more wrinkled, at least 150 gray hairs wealthier, but most importantly, a heart and brain that I love this community about 150% more. I got into service to the city of Traverse City without a specific agenda, but out of a love for our community and a desire to put my skills and passion to work for the people of Traverse City. I didn't anticipate that I would love the city and its people more at the end of this phase. In fact, I thought I knew I would risk becoming jaded and bitter with people and the issues that can haunt us. Public service isn't easy, and I remember someone telling me, and I can't remember exactly who that was, that I should be prepared for 50% of the city to love me and 50% of the city to hate me every Monday night. This might be true to a degree, but I've tried not to let it harden me to the humanity of our city, and I would encourage you all to do the same. Let's continue to be open to the people and their ideas, be open to change, be open to surprise, be open to our own growth. Serving through the pandemic wasn't anything we predicted, but we endured it together, and I'm proud of the work we were able to do through those trying times. I'm glad we're back in person, but I am grateful for the shared humanity of over a year of online meetings where we met each other's cats, dogs, a rabbit, children saying goodnight, and life partners in and out of the frame, and varying degrees of internet stability and mental clarity after spending all day working, homeschooling, scarfing down some food, and then jumping online for probably the 10th time in one day and until 11 o'clock at night, because those meetings tended to go really late. I found more grace for people and myself during that time, and I hope I still dig that up from time to time. Speaking of shared humanity, I would be remiss in sharing that we couldn't do our work without the city staff who really do the work of the city day in and day out, regardless of how the political winds blow. They keep marching along, doing great work for our community in partnership with nonprofit organizations, citizens, businesses, and our partners in the media. They, you, are all the unsung heroes of our service to the city. Thank you for the guidance, the thoughtful questions, the heartfelt yeses, and the pointed no's that help us do a better job for the people we represent. I don't show up for our city, however, as one woman in a bubble. I'm here with you and for you because of my family, friends, and colleagues who support me every day. Special thanks to my husband, Chris, and my daughters, Ren and Phoebe, for holding down the fort almost every Monday evening for city commission meetings and countless other meetings and obligations. I'm so grateful to you and the sacrifices that you all make. Although I'm leaving this seat at the end of this month, I'm not leaving my service to the city and our community. Although I'll be wearing a different hat as a county commissioner come January 3rd when I'm sworn in, I look forward to all of the continued opportunities to build bridges between the county and the city and work in earnest on our urgent issues that are regional in nature and require collaboration, relationship building, and critical thinking. Housing, childcare, our climate crisis, and mental health, to name a few. So this isn't really a goodbye, but more of a can't wait to work with all of you again very soon. Thank you.
Okay, with that, may we have the consent calendar, please?
Yes, the purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed from it and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission, and such requests are automatically respected. If an item isn't removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. Item 1, consideration of approving the minutes of the December 5th, December 12th, and December 14, 2022 meetings of the City Commission. Approval recommended. Item 2, consideration of scheduling a public hearing regarding a planned unit development application from the City of Traverse City for the replacement of the existing 5,783 square foot building at 801 East Front Street, the Senior Center, with a new 18,089 square foot building with a reconfigured and reconstructed parking lot and relocation of pickleball tennis courts and shuffleboard courts, as recommended by the City Planning Commission, with the condition that the developer will continue to work on a landscape plan that is acceptable to the Parks and Recreation Division and Planning Departments. Schedule public hearing for Tuesday, January 17, 2023, recommended. And lastly, item 3, consideration of superseding the December 5th, 2022 action of the City Commission authorizing a purchase order in connection with the West End Beach Volleyball Court expansion project, and instead authorizing a contract for the project, which is a housekeeping matter. Approval recommended.
Okay, you've heard the consent calendar. Anyone from the City Commission like to remove one of the 3 items? Anyone from the public?
And I'll just ask that you state your name and
Okay.
address and indicate the item or items you'd like removed from the consent calendar.
Rick Buckholder, 932 Kelly Street, items 2 and item 3.
Okay. So that only means we have 1 item, so I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the consent calendar as amended. Support.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay. Item 2 is the introduction of the PUD and setting the public hearing for next month on January the 17th. Mr. Buckhalter, you had this pulled. Would you mind reading the rules for your public comment?
Certainly. So these are the rules for everyone giving public comment. Tonight, we ask that you state your name and address, indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, or a city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment. When your time has elapsed, the timer will beep. And finally, we ask that all language be respectful to everyone. Thank you.
Rick Buckholder, 932 Kelly Street, I'm a Traverse City resident. I want this pulled. I wish you'd postpone it because I was going to put a FOIA in, which I decided to postpone because of current circumstances with your staff until after the first of the year. When, I don't know. But I want to know who gave the approval to move the building, which then in turn required the moving of key assets of a city park. And it appears to me it was department heads at this point. I mean, something of that magnitude, A, should have public meetings just on those specific points, and 2, it should be decided by the city commission. So I'm not complaining what the building looks like. Personally, I don't like the fact that you're moving it, but I promised some people I wouldn't kick up a stink about it. So I'm doing this because the process is, this kind of reminds me of what happened to Clinch Park when Clinch Park got trashed following the 3 years of your bay, your say. Then mysteriously, it turned out to be something people specifically did not want to happen. So if the residents and taxpayers of the town own the major park, and you're going to make major changes to the park, and when you had the public meetings with the residents who use the senior center, I mean, you were asking them about the building, not the park. And even if, I don't know, to tell you the truth, I can't remember if they showed the proposed final building out of 3 choices to be moved, if they just showed you the building. I don't remember that. But a lot of the people, a huge percentage of the people who would have attended those meetings are county residents, maybe as high as 70%, and city residents own it. I mean, the county residents are welcome to use the facility, but they aren't welcome to make a choice about something that major. So I don't know if you can proceed with whatever you're going to do, but answer that question, decide. I'd like to decide and discuss publicly at a meeting with maybe 100 or more senior center resident, users, and see if they're okay with it, why it's still time. I mean, you're a long ways from doing the actual bidding for the project, so if there was some public concern about it, you're not going to slow anything down, you're not going to affect the money you've got in so far. You can get an opinion from the people who actually should be having a lot of input in this and see if it's the right thing to do. I mean, the Planning Commission spent like a year and a half or 2 years developing this public input process, and absolutely did not happen in this case. It's just a failure. So another thing, I'd like somebody to discuss when in this entire process of all these meetings over at the senior
Mr.
center
Buckhalter, thank
about
you.
cutting all these
Your
trees.
time has elapsed. Thank you.
Okay. I believe a lot of those questions could be answered when we hold our public hearing. So, okay.
Just to speak of the public openness in the process, I have personally attended at least a dozen meetings about the site plan. It has come before not just the City Commission, but also the Planning Commission, the Parks and Rec Commission. There have been joint sessions of the City Parks Commission and the County Parks and Rec Commission. It's come before the County Board, and it even came before the County Planning Authority back when that existed. Plus, there have been uncounted meetings by Friends of the Senior Center and related groups advocating for their specific concerns, and that's one of the reasons, as I understand it, that the building is physically going to be built at a different location so that levels of service and programming can be maintained at that current location where the building is now through the entire construction period.
I'm actually just going to make the motion because, as has been pointed out, this is for a public hearing, not a final decision on anything. So I'll make the motion that the request from Environment Architects on behalf of the City of Traverse City for a planned unit development application to redevelop Senior Center Park with a new 18,089 square foot structure to house the Senior Center operations and other events, along with additional park amenities as recommended by the Planning Commission, be scheduled for a public hearing on January 17th, 2023.
Support.
There'll be 100 people there.
Okay. Have a motion. Is there a second to this motion?
It should.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any other questions from the City Commission? Any other questions from the public? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Item number 3, which is a correction to the motion that we made, or the action that we took on December 5th, that instead of being a purchase order, it needed to be a contract. And so this is a correction to that decision. This is a housekeeping matter. Rick, you asked to have this pulled.
Rick Buckholder, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. I just want to repeat what I've said before. If you allow these volleyball courts to expand, you have to understand that the hundreds of people a day that come and go in shifts that go to that end of the beach, traverse area between gigantic area of pine cones and pine needles, and you're going to shrink that. And then the city staff, for some reason, 2 years ago, planted 2 more pine trees right in the middle where people used to play soccer and kickball and frisbee. So you're letting one group, by this activity, push another group out, and the other group has no voice. The other thing is, a lot of people don't go to that end of the volleyball beach because the volleyball is constantly going down on the beach. If you're laying down there with suntan oil, you get a sandy ball on you. I mean, it happens all day long. So you're just making it worse. You're pushing the beachgoers. They're looking for a little peace and quiet. You're pushing them even farther down the beach just to satisfy the interests of one group. So I'm not happy with it. And more than likely, a few years down the road with a new commission, they'll just decide to remove what you did and plant grass there again. So I wish you wouldn't do it. I know you're going to do it, but it makes me mad. I got pushed off of that beach down at the senior center beach, and now they're messing that one up too. 40 years, one of the reasons I lived here, in 1 year, you're removing it. I don't have any say in it, and you're gonna flush this down the toilet like you usually do. I'm real sorry you're doing that.
Thank you. As I said, this is a correction to action that we took 2 weeks ago, so I'll be glad to entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and make the motion that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute a contract with Elmer's Crane and Dozer, Inc. of Traverse City in an amount not to exceed $57,852 for the West End Beach Volleyball Courts. Such contract subject as to its substance by the city manager and its form by the city attorney with funds available in the Capital Projects Fund, and that the motion approved on December 5th, 2022 be superseded.
Okay. Got a motion or support? Support by Ms. Stanley. Okay. Any other public comment? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And just for the record, as I said at the last meeting, originally I was not in favor of this, but because the commission took action, and this was the commission direction, I support this because this is what we agreed to proceed with, and that was our decision at that point. It's a commission decision, not an individual decision. Okay, next we go to old business. We have in a way, 1 and 2 can be lumped together, so if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and kind of lump it together. First of all, we'll get the update on the Beitner property, and then there's a consideration of a request from Commissioner Warner, and I believe also from, let me look at my cover memo again. I mean,
Commissioner Stanley
Ashley
supported.
Walter also had this in here, so we'll consider it one going to the next one. Ashley, I'm sorry, Commissioner Stanley. They will take it from there for this reconsideration. So if you don't mind. So Marty, if you'd like to go ahead, or whoever's going to give us an update on this.
Certainly. As you're aware, the city has purchased 4 years ago 3 properties along Beitner and Woodamere that are on the north side of the current DPW facilities. We had discussed the possibilities of using those for some sort of public use. One of the most recent discussions is potentially for housing. Some of the preliminary work that needed to be conducted, we've gone out and had environmental work done. There you have in front of you a couple of different reports. There had been a leaking underground storage tank there that was referenced. And also Awel Mabi, our contractor, has informed us that regarding the geotechnical investigation, they did complete their drilling last week, but they found some compressive soils that require additional lab testing, which is going to delay the report. And that was their initial thing. And so now they're coming back with comments in there, and we referenced the pages in here in which you can turn to of the different Phase 1 report. There's the summary as well as the conclusions for those particular properties.
Okay. Did we get a final on the appraisal?
Yeah, I believe it was included. It was to be included. Did you
Yes, it
receive
was, and I think Ms. Hill can speak to that if you have questions.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, if you want to conclude that, the appraisal, I don't,
Certainly, it starts on page 519 of your packet.
I thought it was, okay.
Oh, yeah.
You'll excuse me if I didn't go through all these pages. Yes. Oh, there it is.
You can hit the number sign.
Just to touch the base, I guess.
Yes.
The parcel,
Okay. The value is at $830,000?
yes.
Okay. That's all. That answered my question, just to make sure I had that. Thank you. All right. All right. Is there anything else to report? I think those were the 2 main items that we were looking for when we last started to talk about this. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, the Commissioner's looking for. Okay, so now reconsideration, a request from Commissioner Warner relating to this property, so.
Yeah,
What
so
are your requests?
in order to bring it back in front of the city commission, I reached out to the city clerk to understand the rules, because even in the years I've been involved here, I don't recall this happening before, because action had been attempted. I don't know what words the city clerk would use, but there was a vote and it failed 3-4. So in order to bring it back, there needed to be somebody both from the yays and somebody from the nays that agreed to put it back on the agenda. City clerk reached out to the four individuals that had voted nay, and Mai Stanley agreed to support putting it back on the agenda, but that in no way indicates that she needs to vote yes this time around, just that she was willing to have it as an agenda item to use up some of our time. And so it's here, and my hope was that with the summary, all 600 pages that we have, I too read very few of the pages, but that's providing some of the information. And as you can tell by the possible motion that I had included, I didn't find the appraisal on page 519 of the 600 pages. But certainly any other considerations, the geotechnical final report, we can put clauses into a recommendation as whatever we call those, clauses into the recommendations, so that certain things have to happen before other things happen. And so I'm curious whether there's interest in attempting to move this forward again.
Okay. Ms. Shamrow.
If that's how we're framing the discussion, which I appreciate, because I think that leaves it a lot more open for us. As has been referenced, I have not gone through all 500 pages yet either. And I think based on some, so I do this without being too finger pointy, some other entities that have put out RFPs recently that were kind of vague, they didn't get great responses. And I want us to get great responses from what we're putting out. So I'd be in support of looking, I don't know if it needs to be an ad hoc like we did with O&G, or something else that would maybe put a little bit more than what I see here as the goals, but kind of more of a parameter, so that somebody bidding on it understands more what we're looking for. Because what I've been told was these previous ones that have been out that were a little more vague, people didn't use the staff time, because we're on our side thinking about it. If we go on the other side, we're asking people to take staff time and create a whole plan with very little information that may or may not be accepted. And I think that causes some people who might have really good ideas, if they had a little bit more direction, to not bid sometimes when it's vague and open. So I'd like to see us, I'm not against pursuing it more, but I would like to see us maybe work on getting some more defined parameters like we've done with O&G, where I think we've gotten some good results in the past. So that's just my 2 cents. Not saying no and not saying it has to be months down the road, but just a little bit more time to examine what we have here and maybe add a little bit more into the bulk of what we're looking for in the RFP. That's what I'd be looking for.
Okay.
Can I respond to it?
Yes, you may.
Just, yeah, that was my intent. And back when we had it in front of this body previously, Commissioner Walter and I were trying to model it after the approach used for lots O and lot G, and trying to learn from that. And I was fortunate to be on both interview committees and talk to the applicants for both of those lots and get the feedback, and tried to incorporate it. The biggest thing I think that was learned from it, and we'll hear about it in the next agenda item with Lot O, is be very clear on the purchase price, that the purchase price can be anything from $1 to the appraised value, depending on the quality of the project. The other things, as far as maximizing number of residential units, yes, we can be very prescriptive, and we had those discussions. The interview committees had those discussions as far as, do we want to say it's between 80% area median income AMI and 120%? Do we want some between 40% and 70%? Do we want 0% to 40%? You know, there's all that, and we can be very prescriptive and say this is exactly what we want, and that's fine. But we erred on the side of just saying we want diversity. We just want to have a spread of AMI up to 120%, I think, but we didn't even say that was an absolute, I don't believe, because we had an understanding that top floor, if say it was a 5-story building, might need to be high-end condos, high-end apartments to help something pencil out. So again, we were deliberately, yes, it can be called vague, but we were trying to leave it open to not impose what we were thinking, but allow the developers to come to us and say what they think might work best. But I do agree that a committee, it would make sense to form one again, and I put it in parentheses up in a paragraph there, formed at a future city commission meeting, and defer that as well. But yes, I absolutely think there needs to be an interview committee, and maybe that interview committee, I would believe, would also want to kind of give a final okay to these are the criteria, and work with city staff, because city staff was involved in that interview process as well.
Yeah, so that's where, and I appreciate the answer, because I think that's getting a little bit more at what I'm looking for, which is just a little bit more of that parameter, because originally when this was brought before us, and I guess this is where I'm coming from too, we were told, well, we just want this to get this out there, and no MSHA funding should be involved. We want to try and get some workforce housing available as soon as possible. And I'm not against that, and I'm not against if there's some units that would have MSHA funding, but I think that maybe having a little bit more of that in this RFP that goes out would be, or defining what we'd like to see in that RFP that goes out a little bit more, even if it's a wide range of 60 to 120 or something like that. I'd just like to see a little bit more of that. So, because at the end of the day, these will come back to us, and I just think it doesn't look cooperative if we then say, no, these weren't really what we were looking for. Thanks for all your time and effort. We're going to put it back out after we've done some more work on it. I'd rather do that work up front and get more in-line proposals. So anyways, I guess that's what I'm saying, is I'd like to see the committee meet before and work a little bit more out, and then put this,
Before we put out,
the RFP, to decide what we want in the RFP. A little bit more detail in the
Like
RFP.
to work with Mission North.
Yes.
well, and that's fine, but I guess I'll try to answer it again, that my interactions with the various entities that submitted proposals for both lots O and lot G were quite positive. Like, I didn't feel that any of them were not meeting what we were asking for. I thought they were all meeting it. And it was a matter of, we had some very excellent discussions, I thought, after they all left the room and we were left to say, oh, okay, now how are we proceeding? I thought we had excellent discussions about apples to oranges, this type of apple to this type of apple, like, because it's not just a cut and dry type of thing, but they were all excellent applicants. So I guess I understand your concern, but I don't share the concern that we won't get good applicants.
Well, I guess my question would be that, and sorry, then I'll stop because I know others want to ask questions, was, as I recalled, at least for G and maybe for O, it's been a few years in these processes, and I know you were more involved in them and remember more. I thought we did have a little bit more of those parameters built out in there, though, in the RFP that went out.
Well, we,
Like mixed
I
income
don't recall. I
specifically.
mean, I'd have-
There
Yeah.
was,
And so that's just what I'm looking for.
but
I'm not-
I feel like we have that relationship with Mission North to know what we're looking at. I don't know that we need a committee to like make some bullet points to give to Mission North at this point.
Well, I would rather them bring us back an RFP and saying, here's what we're doing. If they were engaged in that process the last go-around, they know more what we can look for, and then they can bring us back a draft RFP. We can say we like it, we don't like it, or what do we want to change.
And I'd be-
Right, that's where I see it going.
But
is
that's not
they
in the,
would bring it back.
that's not in the motion, so that's why I wanted to
Well,
clarify this. And that's,
include it.
and because Commissioner Wilson and Commissioner Stanley weren't with us at that time either, so we're also assuming.
And I
there's a
wasn't either.
Oh, yeah, and Richard wasn't either. We're assuming there's a consensus, and we have 4 new people on since the last time we did it. So while they might know what we were talking about 2 commissions ago, or 1 commission ago, we have had a lot of turnover the last few years, that I think that it wouldn't hurt for us to bring back an RFP for approval or do some kind of legwork. That's what I'm kind of looking
Sure.
for here.
Can we strike the word issue, just to draft an RFP?
Sure. I think that's,
So, I'll be glad, I mean.
sorry,
glad-
that answered my question. I
Yeah.
should say,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
not giving
Well.
consensus, sorry.
Well, I'm probably going to be the lone no vote on this, and that's fine.
Well,
I
Mitch
mean,
had a question.
Yeah, well, I'll take care of that in a minute. But, when we first thought about purchasing this property a number of years ago, Tim and I. He had one idea and I had another. My other idea is that we needed to get some more dirt around our public services building for whatever the future may hold for this city. And it's dirt, you know, and that's true. I have no objection to affordable housing or whatever we're going to try and get here, but not in this location. The report gives us some other properties that we can work on. I'd rather pursue it here, but I'm not ready to give up this piece of property at this point in time because I don't know what the next 2 or 3 or 4 years are going to hold, that we may need that property for something else. I'll be the first one to say, for it to be a permanent spot to put snow is not the ideal answer, and it cannot be the ideal answer. And I know we've said it before. Public services and staff need to be looking for another location because that's not what that was meant to be. It's meant we may need a building to house another piece of services that we don't have the land to put it on. That's my concern, and that's the only reason I'm not ready to go for affordable housing at that location. There's others, like Lot G. I'll be glad when the day comes that we can push that one. I understand there were 3 great proposals for that one. Just how are we going to handle the parking? Don't have a clue yet. So anyway, with that, I'll go through. Yes.
I'd echo some of the mayor's concerns about development at this site and whether it would be better suited to future DPW needs. I can point to other properties that are used by the Department of Public Works that would perhaps be even better for housing, namely the area along Airport Access Road that is also used for snow storage, that has a much larger acreage and less known issues with soil remediation that would be required to build. But that's not saying that we need to automatically switch these parcels and send out an RFP for that one. If we are going to proceed with an RFP process for this, I'm not objecting to that. I'll have to see what the actual proposals come back, but I would like to see some benchmarks in that. I can understand, to use Commissioner Werner's language, some benefit to leaving it vague because we do not necessarily know what a given developer will say this will pencil out for this project or what they'd be able to offer for a given development. Whether they can say, hey, we can have it work if 40% of the units are 40% AMI or below, or they can say we can make it so that 90% of the units are at least 80 to 120% AMI or below that. I don't know. I'm not a developer. Maybe a developer that looks at this could say this, but we should have some guidelines about either benchmarks of how much we would like to see at certain thresholds, or stating that one of the goals for the development is to maximize the creation of new housing serving the lower income people that live and work in our community.
Any other thoughts?
I just had a quick question too that I just forgot and then remembered again. The Mission North contract that we have right now, what properties does it cover? Are we going to need to open up a new contract for this? I'm seeing a head nod. I'm seeing a head nod.
I would need to make adjustments to it so that, because that's is an extension of some of the work that was not originally included in some of the original agreement.
So the original agreement, though, had specific properties listed, and this was not one of them? Or how did that, I guess, or was it hours or
I
pennies?
think you're saying that his original agreement is being completed,
Yes.
and we now we would have to,
Yeah, we can extend that.
or make an extension to that agreement.
Do we need, sorry, I turn to our attorney, do we need to do that in a different order to make sure that this is online?
It's within his.
Yeah, it's
spending
frustrating.
authority.
This is government.
It's within his spending authority to
Okay, we
expand
can
the
extend it.
contract with Mission.
That's why I just want to make sure that we're not
without our
ordering something that we don't have money for and asking somebody to work
No,
without
we do.
pay, so.
They can bring that back to us in two weeks. If this gets approved, they can still bring it back to us in 2 weeks as one of the things they have to do to get done, if they have to bring it back, so.
It looks like the total amount of the current purchase order is around $8,000, so
Okay.
it would probably be
Okay, great.
Yeah, this
That
funding.
satisfies that.
Because it is one of the properties that was at the top of the list when we did the analysis when Mission North did the analysis for us of the city-owned properties. It was, I can't remember the number, but it was in the top several for us to, that wrapped up that project, which would give us that framework for kind of triaging our opportunities. Perfect. Do you want to adjust the motion?
I'll try to do it on the fly if that's okay. So I'll make a motion that the city manager proceed with the assistance of Mission North LLC to draft a workforce housing RFP for redevelopment of the 3 contiguous parcels, 715 Beitner, 723 Beitner, and 535 Woodmere, with clear intent that the received proposals will be evaluated based on maximizing the number of residential units, minimizing the carbon footprint, and intentionally creating community, and something about bringing back a draft RFP by the end of February.
Second.
For our review, for city commission review.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Okay, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this?
Rick Buckholder, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. There's a question of whether you might get a developer, will you get a quality developer? I mean, there's so many problems with this. I can't see anybody with a lick of common sense taking a risk on this, number one. Number two, and I won't say specifically what I'm talking about, and I'll be amazed if you can't figure it out. One of the greatest tragedies in modern Traverse City history happened on that property. And it just bothers me that you would put housing on there. It really bothers me deeply. I think it's a moral question. Like I said, I won't say what it is, but you should know. Secondly, that's right next to active railroad tracks. And I don't know where you people live in town, but most of the year, especially May through October, there's middle of the night, between midnight and 2 in the morning, the railroad go through there. And every single street they cross, they're going like 5 to 15 miles an hour. They blast their horn like 5 times. And it bothers me from like 3/4 of a mile away. I can't imagine what it would be from 10 yards away. I'm hearing that almost every day, or excuse me, every night. There's also a question of what the city manager said, and I totally agree, and Richard agreed with it. I mean, there's tons of city equipment moving in there, and our needs are growing, so you can only expect to have more equipment. But on a practical sense, every single piece of city equipment, when they back up, a beeper goes off, which is all day and all night when they're loading the sand trucks, by way of example, if they do other things. I mean, how do you like to listen to that at 3 o'clock in the morning during a snowstorm, or every 15 minutes the front end loader is beeping while he's loading the truck? I mean, just as a practical thing, who would want to live in that environment? The other thing was, where would the egress be, ingress and egress for traffic? Woodmere has become an absolute nightmare in the last year to 18 months, and I won't go near it after 3:30 or after 6 o'clock. It's backed up way past Hannah. So it doesn't mean you can't get in and out, but it would be a nightmare if you had to do it several times a day during that time. And you'd have to, as far as I could tell, you'd probably have to, because the railroad tracks are right there, you'd probably have to share a driveway with the city. I mean, I may be wrong, I don't know, but I don't hear anybody talking about the practical elements of how are you going to do this. So what I would do, if you're going to put out a request for proposals, I would initiate it, but with asking them not what you could put into it housing-wise, but what would the problems be building here and for the residents who might live here. That would be a more practical initial assessment, in my mind. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
John with Homestretch Housing. With regard to that property, I would say Homestretch would put a development anywhere it's viable, and that's debatable what it makes it viable or not. But in the city, we're limited with land, and even in some of the urban areas or other areas around the state, the path of growth eliminates the ability to develop some pieces of land. And you just pushed out further. So to be walkable, to be within, the grant writing specs that you want, to get grants, that's important. We don't want to keep pushing people out so they have to keep driving back in. And then the RFP that you had put out, I thought was good. It made sense. And the idea that you can say you want this type of housing and you need this type to support that type, the developer will figure that out. But if you say you want that, then we just have to raise the money. If you want all 30%, we'll just have to raise the money. We can do it. It'll just take a little bit more time. So just a couple of thoughts.
Good evening. Carolyn Alstead. I'm representing Groundwork Center for Resilient Communities located at 148 East Front Street. Work within the city, but do live I do live outside the city limits. So speaking in favor also of the Beitner properties to move forward with an RFP. There are only so many properties available within the city, kind of like John just mentioned. You only have so many opportunities. And we really see that this property could be very valuable for housing. In terms of transportation, there are more options to do non-motorized transportation. It is next to the trail system. There's a bus stop practically across the street. And also we hope that someday there will be even a passenger rail service that could be in walking distance. So in terms of transportation, it's really quite high. Again, people can then reach the amenities that they want by foot or by bike more often. And when it comes to those amenities and thinking about why someone would want to live at that property, there is the library nearby, but there's also restaurants, there are grocery options nearby, there's healthcare centers, there's a gym, there's a couple bike shops, and the list kind of goes on and on. So we really see this as a great location to live and really see that there are ways to maybe work through some of the issues with the site, and that can be kind of discovered within the RFP process. And we really, I think at the end of the day, see that this property is in many ways too nice to not be housing. So thank you so much.
Hello, Ty Schmidt, 841 Washington, city resident, live about a half-mile north of this property, and I just want to say thank you to Mai for saying yes and being open to reconsidering this on a fast turnaround. I think this would be a fantastic place to live. Caroline made some notes about rent spots, but I also made a list. I was like, here's what would be a wonderful place to live. It's by the library, by the Tarp Trail, by Family Fair, 3 bike shops, Hall Park, Traverse Area Community Sailing, the Boardman Lake Loop, TBA Credit Union, Skigama's Nursery, Oriana, Traverse Heights Elementary, doctor's offices, Elevate, Climbing Gym, dentist offices, F&M Park, the filling station, West Bay, Grand Traverse Children's Garden, Silver Spruce Brewery, Beta Bus, Reduno, and the rowing community. I think this will be an amazing place to live, so thanks for considering.
My name is Ryan Hannon, 2279 South Airport Road West. I work with people experiencing homelessness, so any type of housing is definitely good for our community. I know the disparities of the amount of housing we have for the amount of people that need it, so housing certainly is good. I would also wonder if there's any possible way to incentivize some sort of homeless possibility, specific homelessness units in any development that may be out for proposal. We know that people experiencing homelessness trying to get housing, oftentimes their applications are put down to the bottom or not even considered. Oftentimes, even if they have the funding, which may be a subsidy to help pay that. Also, with the location right next to the railroad tracks, maybe there could be a super cool, energy efficient wall system or something to help reduce some of that noise. But I wanted to, I was sparked by the gentleman talking about the beeping noises from the loaders, and I happened to remember a gentleman I worked with that that slept in a grass clipping pile because as it decomposes, it creates heat. And one day a loader came along to scoop up the pile to go into the dump truck and nearly scooped up this man sleeping. He came up before it. So there's some people that would not mind the beeping noise. People at Safe Harbor, with the snow being dumped next to that, often hear that currently, and sometimes it may be hard to imagine this, but certain things that happen when people are experiencing homelessness sometimes are comfort when they move into a place. So thank you for considering housing.
Anyone else? Floor is open.
Justin Reed, 630 Cottage Drive, Apartment 1B, Traverse City, Michigan. I thank the City Commission to going forward with the idea of more affordable housing and more attainable housing for people who work in Traverse City, who work outside of Traverse City too. And that's also what I want to say is you guys are more progressive than the County Board of Directors. Thank you. County Board of Commissioners. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to share, we touched on it at a previous meeting related to overall facilities plan. But the bigger picture with this stretch on Woodmere, I think, is good to keep in mind in terms of what we know to be there now, trying to remember to speak into this, and what the future might hold for city and county facilities that are there. So the county is in the process of issuing an RFP for a facilities plan for a more centralized approach to facilities. That includes some of the buildings on Woodmere, some offices. We have a shared agreement. They're dispersed throughout the city and across the county, and then the city has joined in to the RFP with the county to also have some input as to the best placement and use of our facilities that are joined with county facilities. And so when you picture that space on Woodmere, yes, it's currently city, and then further down there's some county as well. And that is how it is right now, but in the future, there's likely some of the county leaving that space, and the city needs to renovate those spaces as well. So when we think of highest and best use of land, know that a lot of that is going to be shifting, and we'll probably have more opportunity as a city to work with facilities that are further south of where we are right now. So keep that in mind as you think of the space that's there right now and the facilities that are there on Woodmere, that there's an opportunity for the city to grow in other ways as needed, potentially in partnership with the counties moving around as well. If you can kind of picture how that might work. So just throwing it out there as we think of highest and best use of city-owned property, that we have urgent needs now and some of these needs that are not as urgent but will be coming up for discussion in the future. I don't know if you want to share any more about that, but that's.
I believe next week the county is going out on that. Penny, can you affirm that, or?
RFP has been sent and it's due back in January.
Okay. So RFP has been sent and is due back in January. Poor Penny doesn't even have a mic, so.
Okay. And that's the county RFP, but we joined in with them on a multitude of different properties to take a look at that. And then we can pick and choose what we may want to continue to pursue or not. So that'll come back to us in the pretty near future.
And that's why I'm not ready to say sell, because I don't know what all that's going to come out to. We may not want all that property, or we may have to sell that property. It's a joint agreement. We don't have absolute control over anything. That's why I'm just hesitant to say, here you go, when I don't know what the future holds for us. But that's it, because you're right, anything can happen, so.
I just wanted to say I appreciate Mr. Hannon bringing up the idea of noise reduction, because that was something I was going to say on the record, that if this does come forward and when the RFP does go out, I hope that what we see includes a lot of that if it wants to be considered, because I live, so far that everybody stated on the record, much closer to the train tracks than anybody else who's spoken today. And while it's not, I went to school in East Lansing, it's not bad, it's doable. Adding in the trucks and everything else is a consideration, and I don't think that we need to say, well, it's affordable housing or it's workforce housing, so just deal with it to live in town. I think we need to, if this is going to be a viable project, it needs to be a quality viable project. And so that's throwing it out there that I'm in favor of this moving forward for now, but I'm going to have a pretty high standard that I'm looking for given the location.
And we're talking housing, we talk about homelessness, and I know we all are aware of it. There's got to be some consideration of, it doesn't have to be a lot of units, but hopefully there'll be some units, whatever the proposal comes back, and even if it gets included in there for that consideration, but we'll wait. So, you know, we'll take it from there. I'm still not going to be approval of this, but that's okay. I understand. Okay. Are we through? We have a motion, and we did have a second, right? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Nay. Roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Walter,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Yes.
and Mayor Lewis.
No. Boy, I haven't had one of those in a while.
It's usually the other way.
Way to go.
Yeah, geez, this is okay. Excuse me, I got to go lick my wounds. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, next is item 3, which deals with the Lot O purchase agreement. Marty, I don't know if, I know you haven't been here, but basically, we're ready to enter or make a motion for agreement. I know the city attorneys have worked on it, so who would you like to lead on this?
I think we can both take it. Lauren was good enough to package what was coming out of the agreement in our discussions, myself with Mr. Stimson. Why don't I hit some of the bullets of some of the things we addressed, and then you hit the legal side of it? Does that work for you?
Well, I mean, the
Go ahead.
bullets are what we have, so, yeah, go ahead.
So I'd like to go back a little bit of history. About a year and a half ago, we were pursuing this discussion in regard to Lot O, and it got held up a little bit, primarily because of a lawsuit that occurred in regard to the height and the accoutrements that could be on the top of the building above 60 feet. And so that put a kibosh for quite a period of time. About last December, about a year ago, we started getting serious, though, about working through that issue. And Mr. Stimson is here to discuss some of the things that they've done as well. But one of the real key elements was they found a way to redesign it to stay under the 60 feet. And that was a real critical component of us continuing the dialogue. And so we did go out and we'd identified in the agreement the $470,000, which was the value of the original appraisal. Because it had been prolonged because of the lawsuit, and over a year, we went out and got a reappraisal. As you may recall, we reported that out to City Commission a couple of months ago. There's an additional value of the property, which was no surprise to anybody, of about $130,000. And in the original agreement, we were looking at splitting out those costs 50-50, but I recommended to stay consistent with the original negotiations and the presentations of all, I believe there was 4 presenters, if I recall correctly, that we stay consistent to the original plan so that there was no question that everybody was playing on the same fair grounds. So even though we have identified and been transparent about the additional value, that I was recommending that we stay with the original split of the cost of $470,000 and not the additional $65,000, I believe would be, of the additional value. We also ran into the values in regard to where and what type of housing they were going to be able to present in terms of the 80% residential units. That came out through the original proposals, but there had been some changes because of the outlook from the state, as I understand it, Mr. Stimson, in regard to how they looked at some of the joint rooms. There was a joint bathroom and kitchenette area. So that was frowned upon, I'll just use the term, by the state. So there were some adjustments that did change the amount of housing with 4 units, as I recall, from 64 units down to 60. The city would have the right of first refusal if in the future the property became available. And also we talked about the length of the agreement. Oftentimes, as an example, with WODA, that's for a total of 45 years. And in this particular one, I was recommending perpetuity because it's downtown. Doesn't mean that you can't go back in a future commission and the future board and have a discussion, but for now, to hold on to that string as of the location of it downtown, and that the city have that right to go back to it if for whatever reason the housing units were not being provided, that the city would have the first right of that property. And so again, instead of a set timeline, that the agreement would be that this housing would be provided for perpetuity, which I think was a very important component to the City Commission, to make sure that this type of housing is provided for perpetuity. Again, once we get to that portion, there's timelines in here in terms of the amount of closing, 14 calendar days, effective the date of the agreement of the closing, execute a quick claim deed. They have 2 years to allow Homestretch to acquire financing for the project of 80% of total development costs that are triggered. And basically, that gives them time to plan, prepare, and execute. We would continue to maintain control of it on the short term and until they're ready to execute their plan. We have the parking services that are there that continue in place. The city have that service provided for as long as possible, and then that equipment would be removed by the parking services off the property at the appropriate time so that they could move forward with their particular project here. So it's not quite finalized in the final form. It's very close, not quite. And that's kind of where we left it. And that was a little bit of a concern, obviously, until we have a final document. But we're very, very close in terms of the gist of it. Lauren, you have anything you want to add?
No, I mean, I think we have a draft that's been going back and forth, and the commission hasn't seen it yet because it's still red line. So the bullet points cover the highlights of what's been discussed.
Let me ask the basic question, which is what's left in there, is this something that would have to come back to us, or can we say move forward with the purchase agreement based upon the bullet points we have there?
I think the question is what the commission is comfortable with.
That's what I'm asking. But is there anything more major than this?
There is another item. We had been working with the neighbors. There was some great concern in regard to parking and access for being able to not only have deliveries, but also trash pickup and such. So we've gone through several different, I'll say, generations of discussions and looking at different options. But what it really comes back down to is working with, and that's not in this particular agreement at this point, that the design be to allow access, which I think you've seen the conceptual drawing of somebody being able to drive through there, but it's not encompassed into this agreement yet.
I didn't, my question is,
Yeah, specific to that item, because I've spoken against that since the very beginning, even during the interview process, I would be quite comfortable and actually like it if we leave negotiation of ingress and egress to those other properties, because there's no responsibility to the city to provide that, and the city attorneys weighed in on this. Leave that up to Homestretch and the neighbors to negotiate what they need to, because Homestretch needs all the cash they can get. So if the neighbors want to pay them for the right of ingress and egress and whatever egress, let them pay them. Like let the free market work, and let that go. Like, we shouldn't be burdening Homestretch with something that we shouldn't be burdening them. So it should be up to Homestretch to work it out, in my opinion. So, and I do think that, well, go ahead, I'll give it back.
Well, that's what I was, we're selling a lot that, that'd be up to Homestretch to work it through, and if they can't finalize it, within the 2 years or get what they need, then they get their $9,400 back, and we still have a piece of property. That's just me, so.
So
Yeah, well, please.
So, two things. One is that I was not, several of us who were not on the commission when this RFP went out to begin with, and I understand the logic around you're not able to secure financing for those sort of dormitory style, maybe single room occupancy concept units. But I'm looking at point number 2 in the executive summary. Will construct affordable housing units as generally described in its qualification-based proposal for Lot O dated June 23rd, 2021. And I know that in previous discussion, one of the things that was that this current commission was very excited about was the mix of incomes and the different kinds of units that were going to be available there. And so I'm questioning whether I recognize that it perhaps is not feasible, but is this in keeping with the intent and the vision that we had for Lotto? This is prime downtown Traverse City real estate. And if we're talking about highest and best use, I have concerns about that. And my other concern is that, and if I forgive me if I haven't seen it, there were lots of problems downloading this packet. There were lots, because of the size of some of the other reports, but have we seen even the red line version of the agreement? Okay, so I feel like it would be irresponsible of us as an elected body to move forward with approving an agreement we haven't even seen the red line version of. So that is my 2 cents on where I stand with this.
Appreciate it.
I have a question as well, and to those in the crowd who maybe just saw like the Lotto is up for a vote, this was brought up and we're having this discussion now because Commissioner Walter did work very hard on this and this is our last meeting. But I do have some concerns about not having seen the contract yet either, which we probably would be able to see in a couple of weeks. But I guess I have a question if Mr. Simpson's available. I see him standing up there, so I'm going to direct it at him. And it goes to Commissioner Stanley's point. This was supposed to be mixed use, and part of the appeal was that servers and people who work as line cooks and stuff could afford to live there because there was going to be this workforce housing. And I'm not against having it be a mix with affordable, but the whole point was that the people who work downtown were going to be able to live downtown. And we all know, despite how rhetoric sometimes works, that a lot of the people who work downtown make just a little too much to qualify for that affordable housing. So is that the case, that this is now being looked at for all MSHA funding and all affordable, or is there still a workforce housing component?
There's still workforce housing, but the way that this is written, where 80% of the units meet an income average of 60% AMI, that's how low-income housing tax credit projects are underwritten.
Yes, I know.
That's the narrow path you have to fill, but it still leaves 20% for the workforce. So on the next slide, those are the 60 AMI rents, and if you can see, they range from $446 to $892 for the studios. That's I think what you're targeting, right? One bedrooms, $847 to $946. Those are under $1,000 a month.
But you're getting funding from, so they have that qualification that they have to qualify.
Right.
So I guess I'm just going to say that I'm joining with Commissioner Stanley, and I apologize to those that are here. I'd like to see this come back to us like at the Monday, January 16th meeting with the full contract and a better markup for us to look at, because the last presentation we had a lot more workforce housing in it and a lot more, and this is the first time we're really getting a peek at this new look, and I need to see more to be comfortable with it. I really do want to see this continue, and I really wanted to have to support it while Commissioner Walter was here. But I think we're just in a position right now with probably the holiday rush and things going on with different staff that I'd like to put it off just a couple weeks so we can see the whole picture.
I appreciate that a ton, and I think you could also appreciate that we answered the RFP to the T that the RFP addressed. We did our job. We got the award. It's been a year and a half. We can't move on this project. It's almost like, okay, here's your RFP, meet that. But then once you meet that, we're going to want you to meet this. The goalposts have been moved. We've a little bit massaged it with the unit mix, 64 to 60. If we can't get co-housing financed, you're not going to get the project in that dormitory style. So we pivoted, we shifted, we did the height thing. We're bringing a mass timber project to the area for northern Michigan. I mean, it's just, we've done our job. It's time. A week, 2 weeks, max. But if you can agree to these, which we've done in perpetuity, and everything else that you see here, then I think we can work on it and be done.
And Mr. Simpson, I appreciate that, but again, we don't even have a contract in front of us, so I hope you'd understand a little bit
I
of
don't
that.
have anything in writing either that said we got the
Anyways,
RFP.
I was about to ask you,
Sure.
we have, I guess, again, we haven't seen it, that this gives you 2 years to get 80% of the funding together. I would say, and this is not on you, but we've had a couple of agreements in the last few years where we've gone into property deals and been told they were for affordable housing, and some of them haven't even had a shovel put into the ground yet. And so I'm looking to potentially see when it comes back, not just a funding date, but a shovel-ready date. And I'm not asking for it to be 18 months, but I also don't want this Lot O sitting here for 5-6 years and we're still talking about it because there's 80% funding, but we're not quite there with that last 20%. So I'm 1 vote of 7, so that might not be anything else anybody's worried about, but I am interested in getting that because this is something we're trying to fill.
I agree, 110%. If we could start sooner than that, I would give you a date if we can get the funding. Affordable housing is hard, and the low-income housing tax credit is the avenue to getting it done the quickest. I think the city manager could attest to that with what WODA's doing. Their turnaround is fast. It takes me 2 years to raise $650,000 for a property in Sutton's Bay. I mean, but I have no choice. I can only do so much. So if I could do it in a year's time or less.
I'm definitely not asking in a year or two, don't worry. That's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But I am kind of looking for a bit more of a broader discussion of a timeline.
Yeah.
Definitely not trying to rush you into 24 months or something like that. But
I'll commit to any timeline. It's just, will I fail at that timeline if it's unrealistic and whatnot? But I think the points are agreeable. The one aspect that was brought up that wasn't addressed, it shouldn't be addressed by the board, I believe, is the ingress and egress for the neighbors next door.
Mhm.
Leave that up to us to
I'm fine
to
with that
tackle.
too.
Okay.
For the public's benefit, I don't know the intent of Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow's questioning, but it did sound like it could come across, and again, I don't know her intent, as though the amount of workforce housing has changed. It's gone from 64 units to 60 units. Materially, it's the same project, and nothing has changed. And the 80% of 60%, yes, that can be a little confusing, but as was stated, that's how these things are done. And the project still has different floors, including the 20% that's not part of this, which is market rate housing. So it essentially looks like the same exact project, except there's 4 fewer units. It went to 60 instead of 64. And so, again, it may not have been the intent to sound like, oh, the project has changed and we haven't seen what the project looks like now. It's the same project by all intents and purposes. I can appreciate the concerns with not seeing the final contract, but the project itself, I believe, is the same project, except but for 4 units.
yeah, just to address that, I'm not trying to sink this battleship, as it were. I just want to see the contract and kind of see everything all together. We have a page and a half with 6 points on it, which are nice. I'd just like to see everything presented to us in a package like the 16th and have it ready for vote.
I guess I would like to hear from the city attorney, because she mentioned form, like whatever we're comfortable with. And many times in the past, we say per form by somebody and something else by somebody else, and it's the two of you over there. So I am interested in seeing whether
Substance by city manager.
substance and form.
It's in the motion, yeah.
Right there, it's always in the motion.
You didn't have- can't find the
The
motion.
whole thing there. So I would like to make a motion that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute a purchase agreement with Homestretch Nonprofit Housing Corporation as described in the memorandum contained in the packet for the December 19, 2022 City Commission meeting. Such agreement subject to approval as to its substance by the city manager and as to form by the city attorney. I am open to friendly amendments if that helps.
Second.
Are we opening this up for discussion?
Yeah.
Hang loose. Hang loose. Okay, did you second?
Yeah.
Okay. I understand it says one thing, Mayor. I won't sign anything I don't like, so it doesn't get resolved. I just don't sign it. We'll bring it back. So if I don't feel comfortable, I think they both know I've done it before, I got to take it back if I don't feel comfortable. So.
If it changes any of the material terms of the bullet points, we would bring it back. But Mayor, you have to sign if the commission makes the motion.
I'll just do what they do in other states. I'll just leave town for 6 months. So it's just kidding. We'll take it from there. I'm just kidding. Okay, I'll be glad to open this up for comment for those that want to. You got 3 minutes, so please do.
My name's Matt Bouchard, and I'm a property owner downtown. I own 122 Cass Street, along with my sister. I'm one of the adjoining properties of Lot O. We've been owners of the property since the late 60s. We've been paying taxes on the properties since the late 60s. Commissioner Warner, I take a little offense to your comment that it's none of your business and we should work it out with Homestretch. I think it is the commission's business. There are businesses that are going to be extremely affected by this project, and not particularly in a good way. We have not had transparency with this whole process so far, or at least we don't feel like we have. We've had a couple meetings with Marty and Jean and Homestretch on this, and we can't seem to get a clear answer on this. But this is going to affect our income immensely. This is not just we get to drive in, drive out. I lease 12 parking spots behind my property. Probably none of you knew that except Marty because you were in the meeting. That is income. I will lose that income. I need that income to pay my taxes to the city. So yeah, this is very important. Scott's here from the Alma Shop, and it's going to affect him even worse than it's going to affect me. He probably will have to shutter if this project goes up and we do not have access to our property. It effectively, our properties are not just storefronts. It's a whole package. So I really like you guys to consider, before you enter in an agreement to sell this, working something out where we have access to all our property. Commissioner Werner, if somebody built a house right in front of your driveway, how would you feel? I know that's kind of a stretch. It's not really an equal parallel. It's not apples to apples because that'd be probably on a road. But you get the idea of what I'm going for here. So please consider this before you enter in an agreement. Help us out. We've been taxpayers for years. You don't want to put up one project and kill 2 other ones in the same stroke. It doesn't make sense for the city. We all want to see the city do well. We want to see the city thrive. We want to make business. We want to make money. They want to make money. You guys want to see downtown develop, grow. But let's do it all together, not one at the cost of another.
Could we ask questions since this is a stakeholder?
No, it's public comment.
Can I ask?
I'll take care of that in a second.
Scott Parkhurst, 124 Cass Street. I'm sorry, I don't really have my thoughts together on this because we just found out about it. I was glad enough to get a phone call from a neighbor who just found out from somebody else. The last time we met, I met Marty. He was in the parking lot when I got a 10-page paper dropped off in my lap and said, this is what's going to happen. We tried to process it. Jean's been great assisting us from the DDA. Then we had a sit-down meeting. We talked about parking. We talked about egress. We all got along. We all talked. We all wanted to give and take and work together, Mr. Warner. And it said, great. We took our notes. All shook hands. Everybody said they'd get back with us. And here I stand. Nobody's called me, nobody's emailed me, Marty hasn't reached out to me, nobody, to any of us in the corner. I talked to our friends at Max's today, they didn't know anything about it. Our other neighbors that we didn't have time to talk to, I just haven't been, just doesn't have a good feel to it. And when we were invited, I think we tried to do our best to work with the property and let it all work out, but you're gonna strangle access to the back of our property, and I agree with my neighbor, it is your business. And you should be. We've been taxpayers downtown for years, and between 2008 and 2012, when there was tombstones all front downtown and for sale signs and for lease signs, we were paying taxes. And now that it's inconvenient because, we're last on the list or don't even deserve a phone call for consideration, it's just very disheartening.
Good evening. My name is Jean Dorenzi. I'm the CEO of the Traverse City Downtown Development Authority. And the project and property purchases are encouraged to work through the process and maintain the integrity of the RFP process that was issued by the city on May 22nd, 2021, asking for proposals to maximize the number of residential units, which has been identified by Homestretch, minimize the carbon footprint in parking, which has been identified by Homestretch, create community through building design and establishing first floor retail, a diversity of price points, and favoring long-term rentals over condominiums, which Homestretch has identified. But one of the things that they have not identified is to either maintain access through Lot O to the adjacent properties on its north side or gain agreement on a revised solution that was issued in the RFP and identified within the RFP that the city would. We, the DDA, and the city met with the adjacent property owners, Homestretch, and the architect of record to identify solutions, obtained a survey of Lot O, and we're working through possible solutions and come together with those discussions and solutions. However, we have not completed nor seen what the possible solutions can be. We're working with the architect to identify those. Therefore, to meet the intention and with your action today of the RFP without providing the time for solutions, I'm asking therefore that the property purchase require the historical vehicle access through Lot O for the adjacent properties on its north side. This project is one that meets many of the city's strategic vision, but the vision must include current businesses and property owners and working collaboratively together to obtain success. The adjacent property owners have worked with us in good faith based on the RFP that was issued and based on coming to the table on 3 different solutions to come with a solutions to your meeting and come together. Property owners and businesses together make a viable and healthy community and downtown. And putting infill development needs to be part of solutions and working together to make a positive impact. Keep access to the properties as identified and let the property owners and businesses come to the solutions before a purchase agreement is made. It meets the intent of the RFP that this city issued. Thank you.
Hang on.
Hi, I'm Karen Hilt. I'm a board member on the DTCA, and I am a business owner. I have 2 shops downtown, one on Union, one on Cass. Matt's my landlord. We've been with there for 8 years, probably their longest term tenant in several decades. And shame on you for letting a nonprofit business come in and decide if they're going to let us get access to our space or not. We've been here. There's no reason that our rights shouldn't be protected to this space. He has already said, once I get the land, I can do what I want with it. I can put what I want there, I can do. So it's great that so many things are being met, but I just think it's shameful, full on shameful, that you're gonna put it on us to have to pay now somebody to have access to our land. You're going to landlock us. That also means that if we want to expand our buildings, if we want to do any kind of work, we won't be able to get big trucks through, anything that we need through. So this is a big concern, and I am appalled that you're going to leave it in the hands of a third-party entity. And do note, they're a nonprofit organization who's going to put his wife's for-profit business in there, right? So he's getting paid on multiple ends of his deal. So yeah, of course he wants what he wants, and I'm all for it, but shame on you for not protecting the existing businesses who've been there, or at least requiring it to be in the contract for in perpetuity how those two landowners are going to be protected in their space. Thank you.
Rick Buckholder, 932 Kelly Street. I'm a Traverse City resident. What these three business people said, I said to you when this first started, when Commissioner Walker and Commissioner Werner brought it up, it would be a great idea to sell city properties downtown for workforce housing. And I said, everything that you said, and every single property has had a major issue, and you're right about everything you said.
Mr. Buckhalter, please direct your comments to the commission.
And you think these folks listen to a word? Or do they just get on their bandwagon and start rolling? You can draw up 100 of these purchase agreements, requests for proposals. If it's a bad idea, it doesn't matter what the specifications are, it's just a bad idea. I mean, it was a good thought, but a bad idea. The smart thing to do would be working with these people is to just outright sell the property so that a normal developer could work with them and make it work, or they don't get nothing. These people still have what they need, their parking. Take the money for the property, let somebody build it, you get taxes. So I did this when my roommate did in Atlanta. Then you go buy properties like on Barlow Street where people live in these really poor houses, and you buy them out. You don't force them out using eminent domain. You help with them, you work with them, you find them another place to live, pay them money for the inconvenience of moving, and then you build apartment buildings. That's how you do it. Now, once you got the apartment buildings, you've got double taxes. They're more significant than what you started with. They're happy. You've got new construction, and you've got money to put in housing where it's not going to cause these kind of problems. So no matter how good you think this idea was, it's very similar to the railroad depot project, and it's just got so many holes in it. It's a nightmare, and it wasn't a good idea. When they went out for requests for proposals for the depot project, the city commission at the time put so many conditions on it that not one developer put in a proposal, even though 40 developers and builders went to the city commission's chambers to learn about it. I mean, they recognized a bad idea with too many catches. The smart thing to do is just sell the property, use the money for something else for housing at a better location, and then you get more significant taxes where you got none now, and you have a more taxable property where you build a larger project in a more suitable area. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Hans Voss, and I am a resident of Traverse City. I live at 727 Washington Street. I'm also the executive director of the Groundwork Center for Resilient Communities. And I want to thank you all for serving the interests of this community, and say that I think this is a great idea, and I think it is the highest and best use of a city-owned lot, surface lot, on the center of downtown. If you ask 10 people in Traverse City, 100 people in Traverse City, what's the biggest problem we have, and it's lack of access to housing. I know the City Commission went through a strategic planning process. Clearly, the number one urgent issue that we have to address is giving people access to live in a way that they can afford. And why not downtown? It's interesting to think about highest and best use. I think housing people in our city is the best thing we can possibly do. So when the city went forward and identified lots and said, let's go through a process a year and a half long to get to this point, it says you're taking action on the city's top priority. And I think it is fantastic that there's a local nonprofit developer with a strong track record who's coming forward with a public interest intention, willing to work for perpetuity, which is very different from a lot of other housing projects, and but can't get moving until that property is secured. So I don't have an opinion about the access issue. That's not what I'm here to speak to. But I do believe that there's an opportunity and there is a timeline. And I think we all want to get moving. And I think whatever happens next, please do it quickly and recognize that there's an opportunity here that allows a community to gather around this project. And I think Homestretch will find other partners that will help make this a reality. And I also think that there's going to be a lot of money that Homestretch needs to raise to make this happen. So if you're looking at this contract, go to $1. Don't sell it for $470,000. Make it an opportunity to directly support this project from the very beginning and demonstrate the city's support, and sell it for $1 and work on a timeline that everyone can live with. Thank you very much.
Hello again, Ty Schmidt, 841 Washington, and I mean Karen and Scott, we gotta figure this out, and I know that we can. I mean, they're incredibly smart people that can figure this out, but I also think this is a fantastic idea. And when we chose Homestretch, right, we selected them. We chose them to do this a year and a half ago. And it made me think about Mark's comment during the interview process about why so few people step up and to want to serve. And I just, the idea that we continue to talk about things instead of taking action on things is one thing that I think that's part of it. And so I encourage you to take a vote tonight, yes or no, Ashley's last go-round. But I'm fully supportive of taking action on the number one priority that we set for ourselves this year. This will be our fourth vote on housing this year, 2 in 1 night, so I'm optimistic. Thanks for dwelling in possibility. I think this will be a fantastic project.
Janine Easterday, 1011 Lake Ridge Drive in Traverse City, Michigan. I too find this to be a very important and very urgent project. And I see the frustration after 18 months that the goalpost keeps moving. I'd like to bring up a couple of points, particularly from the report that was just released. I think the initials are PUMA. It's the DDA downtown report. And I would bring to your attention that the primary, when they did the cloud thing, the primary word on there was walkability. So in terms of the residents and that area of the property, I don't know that their particular parking is much of an issue, because the whole reason for this, and it sort of surprises me that there are merchants that are speaking against this project, since I thought it was the merchants in the downtown area that were in the most dire straits in terms of finding employees. And I thought my understanding of this project was that this project is primarily for those individuals who work downtown, who will previously be employed downtown. And so they wouldn't need, the idea is to support walkability. So it's a little bit confusing that this has become at this meeting contentious. I don't think it needs to be. I think the DDA is committed to solving the problem. I think, and maybe I'm making this more simple than it needs to be, but I don't know why a purchase agreement can't include how that ingress and egress and that parking ability is ironed out. It seems to me that that could be part of the contract. Just one other minor point I want to bring up, because Commissioner Shamrow has mentioned in the past that we make these references to AMI, and most people don't understand what AMI specifically means. So I had written down from a Record Eagle article this month on the 16th. They identified the median income for this area by the U.S. Census to be $69,300 $393. So 60% of that would be someone that's making about $41,635 a year. So that's I think, and that's the 60% that you're thinking of. So I encourage you to use all urgency to get this ironed out and to get a purchase agreement. I don't know why approving a purchase agreement can't mean that it comes back to the commission for approval on the 16th of January. I also want to see businesses in Traverse City do well. They help keep my taxes in line as well. I've paid taxes here since 1994.
Thank you for your
Thanks.
comments.
No?
Yeah, there's only one for.
Okay. Does anyone from the commission have any clarifying questions they would like to have resolved?
Go ahead. Well, I think
We can have discussion too by parliamentary procedure.
I'm going here first, please. Thank you.
Okay, well, I wanted to refer, I think Commissioner Wilson had a question that
Okay.
he wanted clarified earlier.
There's going to be a legal question. I mean, they've been enjoying driving through this lot that.
Yeah.
So has there been an agreement historically for that lot and for their access?
I think if we're going to delve into this, we're going to need to consider doing that in a closed session prior to a purchase agreement being agreed upon. Because it's all tied together.
I anticipated that answer, but I feel kind of funny when we're like all here and we can just like put that out. It's like a yes or no question.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you want to address that?
On that same topic, if that's
Go ahead.
okay. And I touched on it prior to the public comment, that there is not a recorded legal document, whether it be an easement or right-of-way or any other sort of document for non-attorneys, benefit, including myself, that provides neighbors with the right to travel across that property. Because if that did exist, then that would go with the sale of the property, but there is nothing there. It's just, yes, traditionally, that's been the access. But the flip side, you could look at it, is they've been enjoying something for free for a very long time. And there's no reason to continue enjoying that for free into the future. It's up to a new property owner potentially to come to some agreement. And those properties also have a similar access from the alley, and that can be explored. I mean, if you look at the overhead views, you'll see that access from the alley. So it's not, burden's not on us. I mean, we can decide in closed session to explore that and go into that, but legally, again, I'm not an attorney, but legally, the burden is not on us.
Please. Yes, ma'am.
So again, I was not on the commission
Yeah.
at this time. Several of us were not. Notwithstanding any issues of an easement or an agreement, I want to clarify Ms. Dorenzi's comment that as part of the RFP, establishing that access was a condition of meeting the RFP. Is that correct?
It was an addendum to the original RFP. It came out later after the RFP was issued. So it wasn't part of the original, but it was, and we can
But it
bring
was still
up.
something everybody had to respond to in the submission of an RFP, so it was a part of
Correct.
the
And
RFP.
and our submission honors that by the rendering that we gave, and that we are giving them access. That first drawing, we're giving them that access. But since that drawing was done, the DDA came to us and said, how can we do this so that we don't have any curb cuts? We don't want curb cuts along that thoroughfare. So we spent money and time.
Mr. Stimson, please make sure to direct your comments toward the commission.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We spent money and time exploring with all parties to see, can we affect that through egress to the north and no curb cuts? We had it surveyed. We had a professional architect. I spoke to him today. He said, John, there really is no way to get access from the back right now. they own the parking on that alleyway, or inside that alleyway, so that you can't ingress and egress without taking away some of their parking. So I said, well, let's tuck it under our building so they can still come from the north side. That really isn't feasible, because then we're giving them space on our property. The best scenario is to have them pass through our property as we originally drew it, and that's what we're embarking upon doing. So the architect's recommendation tonight to me, before this meeting, let's do the original drawing. If in the future something changes in the back, you can reclaim that area where you're going to pass through and they're going to pass through. If it ever changes, we can construct it so that there's footings in place. I don't have a beef with these guys. I tried to honor the DDA's wishes. If you want to put it in the in the purchase agreement that we will provide that access to that contiguous property owner, fine. Let's do it if you want, and I'll bring that drawing up, and they'll get their access. We'll get our building. We can get this thing going.
This feels like we're getting into negotiating on the floor, which is illegal, as I recall, right?
Okay. It relates to the RFP. We honored the RFP.
It's except we're getting beyond that right now.
I want to make a suggestion, if we want to move this forward, that we have a friendly, I'm going to make a motion on an amendment to this, contingent upon resolving the access issue as identified in the RFP.
Support.
Okay.
No, it has to be supported by somebody who made the amendment, the two people who made the motion originally.
No, there can be a formal amendment,
Okay.
yeah.
This is an amendment to that. We'd have to vote on that before we can vote on the other motion.
Can we make comments on this amendment now?
Yes, you may.
Well, I'm just going to say, I appreciate that. This actually feels worse now, that we're just throwing stuff out, seeing what sticks to the wall, and this is a final binding legal agreement and sale. I really just would like to see us 2 weeks, basically 2 weeks into the new year. And it's been said by people in the comments, Mr. Simpson, I understand you don't want it to be dragged out.
It's fine.
We're not asking for, I'm not suggesting a lot, but we haven't seen the final contract. Marty's been on vacation for 2 weeks, so now we have property owners who feel like they've been abandoned. It was mentioned by Ms. Easterday, this is feels like it's getting hostile when it doesn't need to be, and I think it's just because this got a little rushed. And I think giving us a few weeks to talk about it, not against the plan, I don't feel like many people up here are.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Can I still comment?
Mr.
on it?
Treadwell, are you withdrawing your motion? Or your second, rather?
So my comment about this, again, having had the opportunity to be part of the process, you'll notice that the RFP that was emailed to us was dated, the downtown lot available for housing development, Traverse City, Michigan, Lot O. We got this email sometime in the past several days. It was dated May 22nd, 2021. The addendum, also in that email, is dated 3 days later, May 25th. And the RFP is based on action taken by a prior city commission. So we had a memo, very clear motion with what was in it, and developed the RFP. The addendum and its content, and its, in my understanding intent, again, I'm not an attorney, was never acted upon by any city commission. So it was brought to the interview committee by the DDA because of their concern with parking, and that's what I shared earlier in this same discussion tonight, that from the very start, I was opposed to restrictions on Lot O for the neighbors. Like, that's not our purview. And so I'll leave it up to the attorney at some future date or whatever to figure it out, but I don't feel this body, because we've replaced previous bodies, has an obligation to that addendum, because no city commission has said, yes, that's what we want. We can say that tonight. We can say, yes, that's what we want. But no previous commission did that. That was brought by the DDA and pushed onto that interview committee as something that they greatly valued. And it became part of it.
But it's what went out with the RFP, though.
It's part of the RFP.
Yeah.
It is part of the RFP, but if you look at the wording of it, again, there's qualifying words. We'll be looking to proposers for this or that. It doesn't say must. It doesn't use good legal terms like must have this or must have that. Not an attorney, but it's kind of soft. And again, this body never said that this is what was
Well, this body
required.
never
The prior body to this never said it must be in there.
If I can comment, because a comment was made directly to me about the RFP process, and this was part of the RFP. When the survey was paid by the DDA, when we looked at the survey and the architect, this was not borne by Homestretch, it was borne by the DDA to help with the spirit of this, to get housing downtown, to obtain housing downtown, and to be able to look at the vision, to have walkability piece of it, and to really have the spirit of the RFP and look at how we're working with the adjacent property owners, not just the new that's coming in, but really getting to the spirit of the RFP and the intent to get housing downtown. So the DDA did ask that, can we avoid having any kind of curb cut on that area? So we look to have, when it says come up with some other agreement besides coming through Lot O, that's what we tried to do. Can that be accomplished? We have to work with the adjacent property owners to see if that can be done. So that's what we have been trying to do with the adjacent property owners and Homestretch. So thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion on the table. I'm going to make a recommendation that we postpone any further action until our second meeting in January to give enough time to hopefully work out this particular issue and then bring it back to us.
That's not the motion that we're voting on, though.
Well, huh?
That- to
I know,
clarify that-
I'm trying
to
to make an
clarify for the
erection,
audience, that's not what the
but,
motion we're voting
you know,
on.
if you vote it up or vote down, that means we got to wait 6 months. So we'll have to figure that out. All right. Yeah, I think. So-
Or based on what we did already this evening, somebody from the yays and somebody from the nays can agree to ask for it to be back on the agenda.
Okay.
If it fails, we
That's
don't have
correct.
to wait 6 months.
That's true.
We do.
Or if it fails on a 4-3, the rule doesn't apply.
That's fine, yeah. So we
We'll
can
figure
come
it
back
out.
sooner than 6 months, and I think that's the intention.
Okay. All right, just want to make sure. Okay. We ready? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
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 Commissioner Werner?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamro?
No.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley?
No.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Walter?
Yes.
And Mayor Lewis?
No.
The motion fails, and that rule regarding reconsideration doesn't apply. Any commissioner can request that
So-
this come back on the agenda.
Back again, I would hope that on the 16th, this will come back with the red line. You've got at least 4 weeks to hopefully try to resolve the issue, and we'll see where that goes.
And just for clarity, it would be Tuesday, the 17th,
Oh,
because
yeah.
of MLK Day.
17th,
Yep.
that's right. It's going to Tuesday night, so there you go. Okay. Thank you.
Could I
But
ask
we
a-
want this, we'd like to get this project moving sooner rather than later, folks, so. Okay, yes?
I just want to ask a follow-up question about, I know Homestretch is very aware of new legislation that passed at the state level regarding a city's opportunity to issue a pilot outside of Mishta, and I would encourage you to bring that to the city as soon as you can to aid with funding for this project. I'm assuming that'll come at some point, but I encourage you to do that.
We will do that. Thank you very much.
Well, you may want to give a quick comment on that one, because you've got some information that.
Thank you, Commissioner, for bringing that up. I've been in contact with Michigan Municipal League, and they are part of the consortium that helped push for this particular legislation. And they are working with a group with the state. They're going to have a working group to build the administrative policies around this. So it's not, even though the law has been passed and signed by the governor, there needs to be their administrative rules, so they are starting to think about that and work on that.
Okay. So it's not going to happen real quick. Okay. Next, thank you all very much. It's almost 9 o'clock. Why don't we take about a 5-minute break or 10-minute break so we can get a glass of water or something?
There are cookies and pie up at the front here,
Yes.
if anybody would like.
Okay.
It's got to be the next one, the last one.
That's why I was like, what is open late?
I know, right?
I know, yeah.
The gavel.
It's like,
Okay, we are back in session. Thank you very much for everyone's indulgence. All right, our next item is number 4, which is complete streets policy and resolution request. This was on our agenda last week on our study session. We have 3 different resolutions that are in our packet. The first one is, the one that was put forth by Commissioner Warner sometime back. Second one is the packet information from last week at the study session with staff's recommendation back to us. Then the third one is for comparison, is the resolution that was adopted in 2011. I think Commissioner Warner would like to have however he wants to proceed with his resolution or any other discussion he wants to have. So I'll open it up for any follow-up from last week.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, so the colorful document on the table was for me, and sorry for the folks in the audience, but I handed it out to the City Commission 3+ years ago in October, because I believe I then emailed this to Commissioner Walter soon after she joined us that November. It was published that October of 19. And it comes from the Coalition for Urban Transitions, and it's about climate change and zero carbon cities. And to me, this was quite relevant to bring up again because it has active transportation up there in the orange section, it has livable density up in the top right, which we were talking about with housing. It has decarbonization of electricity and energy efficiency, which are also the housing, and the solar panels that potentially could go on the wastewater treatment plant. So just there's so much that we do that involves this diagram. I just want to give this one a shot as far as moving it forward. And same as my original memo, this memo, to me, it's an opportunity to restate and strengthen our commitment to complete streets. And it's the idea of our values guiding our plans and development and not the reverse of that, where we come up with plans and ideas and then decide what our values are. We were very clear back last winter when we were doing our goals and objectives. Complete Streets was in that in very many ways in the wording that we did. And so it's not that, oh, this is a sudden thing that's been brought forward, but I do believe it can help guide our efforts and the plans coming forward as far as the master plan and the mobility plan. So that's why it's here in front of you. I think it's an opportunity for us to, again, restate our values. And I am glad to see that we got emails from Disability Network, Cherry Capital Cycling Club, Norte, and Tart Trails, all in support of Complete Streets, as well as many of our citizens living in our neighborhoods. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, if there are any.
Anybody else got any thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Can you
Okay.
clarify for us and the public, there are quite a few resolutions in here. Can you clarify what it is you really want us to focus on? When somebody said I'm in support of Complete Streets policy, it's like, awesome.
Which one?
But what are we framing our discussion around? Because there's a few things going on here.
Well, without my request, the other materials were added to the packet.
Yeah.
So it's, to me, it's the original. So this is the 4th meeting where Complete Streets have been a topic. And at the first meeting of October 3rd, that's the resolution and the policy that I'm interested in trying to advance. And that's what I shared with those different entities that I mentioned, the 4 entities looking for their support.
I would say that the first resolution that's in there is the resolution that Mr. Warner is seeking our authorization on. The second resolution is the resolution in the memo packet that came from the City Commission that we saw in our study session last week.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Stanley.
So we've did receive many emails, and it wasn't always clear what policy or resolution that they were speaking to, but many of them did address that they were excited that we're engaged in work on the Bike and Mobility Action Plan. And, I want to thank Commissioner Warner for keeping us on task and keeping this in front of us. It's a timely discussion, and even if, our 2011 resolution had been perfect, a decade and more has gone by, and in fact, complete streets have evolved, and I have not spent nearly as much time working through this subject as Commissioner Warner has. But I took his recommendation to delve into the resources at Smart Growth America to heart. And they do provide a 10-element model for a complete street policy. And going through this, some of them are there, some of them are not there. And so as someone who is actively serving on the Bike and Mobility Action Plan along with Commissioner Treadwell, I'm curious how this policy articulates with the work being done there, and would it be possible to form an ad hoc committee with someone from the Bike and Mobility Action Plan, Commissioner Warner, if you were interested, another commissioner, to draft a policy that's a complete streets policy that articulates with the work that's being done and also holds us accountable in that environment, as well as gives staff a very clear set of guidelines to work from. One of the elements that I would want to see in a policy that is number 4 on the complete streets, ideal complete streets policy, is only allowing clear exceptions, and any exceptions must be specific with a clear procedure that requires high-level approval and public notice. So that should be part of a policy that we have so that staff know when they are meeting or not meeting our standards. And I think an ad hoc would be a good way to work through that if there's support for that idea.
No, thank you for the question, and I like the idea. And yes, Smart Growth America is what I look to for drafting the policy. And I do recall what you're referencing, and why I did not include that in this draft was my efforts were also to try to keep it as concise and brief as possible, and thinking that the exceptions, my hope is, like, exceptions are requested through Marty and would come to this or a future city commission anyhow to say, hey, this is why we don't think we can work with the policy on this project, and here's the reasons. And I felt like the reality of it probably matched up quite well with what Smart Growth was saying, and so I left it out, but it certainly could be included, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I thank Commissioner Stanley for that idea, because I like where Commissioner Warner was coming from with this. But I think a couple more voices along with the resource would add to the discussion while we're forming because we have a little bit of a difference opinion on where I think the mobility study will get us, but I think that having these preliminary discussions we often do these things and get the report, and then a month later we form an ad hoc, and having two people who are already engaged and maybe somebody else start the discussion process so we can hit the ground running and already have some framework around would be ideal, honestly. As someone who has sat on the ad hoc for the same topic for 6 years, I always think it can be good when we can get a little bit of a head start and then ramp up efforts as more information becomes available. So, I think I know, I shouldn't say I know. I feel like I understand what Commissioner Warner's intention is, and I think delving a little bit deeper and getting into that a little bit more would be good.
So there's 3 things going on here, right? We have the resolution, we have the idea to create policy, establish an ad hoc, maybe to explore the policy that is informed by the resolution and the mobility action plan. And I'm not sure the order there, but that's going to take a while. But it seems to me that we need to pass the resolution in order to maybe recommend the creation of the ad hoc in order to inform the work of the ad hoc that's framed around the resolution.
But we have a resolution, an imperfect and need of update resolution existing.
Right.
So is there any necessity procedurally to pass a resolution in order to create that ad hoc?
Well, it would better help to inform the work of the ad hoc with our intent. We always talk about like clear intent. And the clear intent is that the new resolution is closer to where we want to be than the old one. And so I don't want to send the ad hoc down this path to say, create a policy based on the resolution that is existing, which we don't think is strong enough anymore. So I feel like we need to pass the revised resolution that would supersede the current resolution. I don't know how that works exactly. And then that would inform the work of the ad hoc to create the policy. I don't think we should create the policy without an updated resolution.
However, okay, may I?
Well, I was just saying, yes, I like that. I mean, I like the conversation, and I can support that completely.
But at the same token, we have, and we're paying what I hope is a pretty good sum of funds to move forward with the idea through the mobility study, that a lot of this is going to come, a lot of those policies and ideas are going to come out of that study. So why are we trying to jump too far ahead before that gets done?
I don't see us jumping. I see it as a parallel path. And the work from this, hopefully ad hoc that might be created, will help to inform the mobility plan as well. It's sort of like a subset of it. And I wouldn't expect for the mobility action plan to know about creating policy that we don't direct them to create. So this helps to direct a specific policy. Without that, the mobility group, people working on that, they don't have specific direction on creating policy. It's just a plan.
I believe they are going to be coming back with policy. Some recommended thoughts and policy for us to consider. Doesn't mean we have to accept it or what. But
It's a plan. I don't know that we directed them to create policy.
the plan becomes the policy.
No,
I
those are
hope.
two different things.
Well, then we're wasting our money on the other one.
But I like the idea
I'm
of
sorry,
parallel.
but they are-
There is policy, the word policy is used in there for the mobility action plan as far as the agreement with Progressive AE. But again, those can be like specific policies of how we do this or how we do that. And my understanding, and Commissioner Treadwell and Commissioner Stanley can speak to it much better because they're part of it, but they're also working on specific like pilot projects and let's try this and show the public how it can work and that sort of thing. But again, I get back to my kind of opening statement that to me, our values should direct what happens with that mobility plan. Yes, the mobility plan can recommend we work on certain policies and maybe it develops draft policies. But this is kind of like the what we hold near and dear, which should help inform it. And again, we had this way back last winter when we did our goals and objectives. I don't have it in front of me here, but there were several bullets that spoke essentially directly to this type of thing, of a policy for complete streets, even if different words were used for it. So I fully support what Commissioner Walter is saying there. And I do think an updated resolution is helpful because it has, frankly, it has stronger wording. The 2011 resolution and the more recent resolution from staff still has lots of wiggle room and qualifiers, and that's part of the frustration that prior city commissions at least have expressed with many different projects that have come forward, and the lack of access for all in whatever project it might be.
I have a question, and it's probably just because of, this has not been a light agenda, so I might just be confusing myself. So really what we're talking about is the basically one-page resolution that you've proposed. Everything else we're willing to set aside, because that's where I just want to make sure that we weren't with some of the things that were pointed out by Commissioner Stanley that were missing, that's kind of moot now because that's the part of the policy part of it, right? Sorry, just making sure I'm on everybody's same page now. I think I got a break in my brain, like reset weird, so.
So you would be comfortable with doing just a resolution, then at our next meeting, we'll come up with a create an ad hoc committee, but all the other parts of that with the city commission complete streets policy, we are not adopting a policy at this point.
Right.
Correct.
So then would we need to amend or revise slightly the proposed resolution because the proposed resolution refers to the attached policy?
To a future policy.
Okay.
Okay.
That the ad hoc will draft.
Good eye.
Good eye. Yeah.
My table of the two versions came in very handy.
See? You like a redliner.
You have your spreadsheets, I have my spreadsheets. There you go. Let me ask, can we, I mean, I'm willing to vote if we're just doing the resolution, but I'm also willing to do that on January the 3rd and also appoint an ad hoc committee when we have another commissioner who's going to be there that may want to serve on that.
Can we just do it now and appoint them? Just kidding.
Tonight?
Voluntold.
Well, it's not on the agenda to do that, so we'd have to make, I'm one of those sticklers that it's not on the agenda, we just don't add it unless we add it in the beginning.
I was actually joking about it. I'm totally fine.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Joking that we sacrifice our
You're
nose.
okay with that, but the resolution just on January the 3rd. And with the idea we're also putting
go
an
knock
ad
on her
hoc-
door.
We can make, well, sorry. So, with assistance from Commissioner Walter and the clerk, I'll try to make a motion that the resolution in support of the proposed complete streets policy be adopted. And
No.
that the,
No.
sorry, oops, you already messed it up. The resolution in support of proposed, that's the resolution in support of complete streets future policy to
There
be
you go.
developed by the ad hoc, to be named in the future, be adopted, lots of futures.
Or maybe that an ad hoc be established.
And an ad hoc be established at our next regular meeting. And that the resolution of support for City of Traverse City Complete Streets policy adopted October 3rd, 2011 be superseded in its entirety.
I think I followed that.
I think I understood
Can you read that back?
Well,
Let's give him a second to catch up.
Wait. That a resolution in support of a proposed complete streets policy be adopted at the city commission, and that the city commission appoint an ad hoc committee as January 30, 2023 meeting.
Not 30.
Yeah, I said at the next regular meeting.
2023 meeting, to work through and establish a policy of some sort, if that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, he's working on it, he's got it.
Yeah. I think it's clear to the commission that what's being, and for the public's clarity, what's being proposed is to adopt the resolution that was proposed by Commissioner Werner in support of a complete streets policy to be considered in the future by the commission, and that the related resolution or similar resolution adopted October 3rd, 2011 be superseded, and that the city commission consider establishing an ad hoc to work on the development of a complete streets policy at the January 3rd meeting.
Isn't that what you said?
Precisely.
That's exactly what you said.
Precisely.
Everybody clear?
Yep.
Okay. I'll open this for the public if they would like to make a comment or two.
Janine Easterday, 1011 Lake Ridge Drive. I did go back to the packet from the study session and reviewed the resolution and the suggestions from the city manager. And basically, what I'm hearing is most similar to that. Both resolutions have, I think the city manager's resolution has a couple of details that you might want to think about. But I do support you moving forward. I'm going to throw in, though, Commissioner Walter at the study session raised the issue of green streets. So I would like to support that the resolution be adopted tonight, that Green Street's resolution also be considered, perhaps by this ad hoc that's being recommended, that the policy wait until the mobility plan has been completed, because I think there will be recommendations coming from the mobility plan, if it's done within a timely manner, that can be incorporated into the policy. Thank you.
Hans Voss, 727 Washington Street, also representing the Groundwork Center. To just say thank you for pushing this forward. There is a tremendous amount of support for Complete Streets, and Groundwork is 100% behind the language in the resolution. Thank you.
Ty Schmidt, 841 Washington. Thank you for having a fun last meeting of 2022. We appreciate you, and we are so ready for this resolution new policy list. So let's get her done in 2023. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Related to the Green Streets question/comment, I did get an email from Liz Kirkwood, who's, I believe, her title is the Executive Director of Flow for Love of Water. And it somewhat laid out, I believe, the idea of using a Complete Streets policy as a stepping stone to get to Green Streets, a lot of synergies between the two. So just sharing that was an email that I received.
Okay. There's no other comments or, yes, ma'am?
Well, the only comment I would make right now, and I think just because of where we're at right now with staffing and availability at the end of the year, I know that there had been a concern that a line or two in this resolution might prove to be problematic when applying for grants and things. So I would just say that right now, we've been working on this, but if that does come out to be, after some examination, something we might need to tweak, that might be brought forward in the new year then, just because we don't have the full staff to weigh in, that might need to.
Fair enough? Okay. He acknowledges that's fair enough. Yes, that's fair. Okay. All right. All those in favor of the adopting the resolution only, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. It is adopted. Okay. All right, our item number 5 deals with the waiving of a competitive bidding process as it relates to applying for a grant application to the Michigan Public Service Commission for a low carbon infrastructure enhancement development grant, which basically is that we would like to put a lot of rooftop solar panels at our wastewater treatment facilities. We have both Art and I hate it when the names go out of my head. That's the first. Randy Akron. I mean, that's the first thing that happens when you start getting old. You forget things. Okay.
Honorable Mayor, if I may, just real quick, just as a reminder, last April you had approved a contract with Jacobs that included some green elements, and one of them was for us to take a look at some of the solar components here at our wastewater treatment plant, and just see how this might be advantageous to the city. So that work was done. Staff worked with Jacobs, and we do have Mark Hugger, who is here from Jacobs, and of course, the presentation that you've seen in the past is what came out of that study from Jacobs. At this point, I'll turn it over to Art Krieger, who is our Municipal Utilities Director. But I also want to recognize Brandy Ekren, who is our Executive Director of the Traverse City Light and Power, that's also here.
Thank you, Marty. Art Krieger, Director of Utilities with the city. As of last Monday, we presented this item and we had discussion on it, and that was at the study session. Since then, we had a little more information come forth, and I just want to bring you up to date. Had a discussion with Brandy last week, Penny and I as well, talking to Brandy, and Brandy recommended that we add the element of battery storage to our grant application, or our request. This is 100% grant available if awarded. the battery element and infrastructure that would go into constructing the battery system to store energy, to possibly shave off peaks during the high demand days, or if there was an outage, it could supply some resiliency for some time. The infrastructure and battery adds about $1 million to the ask, to the request. So we were in the packet asking for $900,000. I'm requesting that we add a little bit of a buffer even to go to $2 million to ask for this grant application request. However, Jacob's out-of-scope cost will remain the same. So that number would stay the same, but we're just going to be, if we consider the battery option, we would like to add the amount from $900,000 to $2 million is what we're requesting. I believe that's part of the motion. The $900,000 was in the motion, so I'd like to just ask for that potential amendment, or if there's any questions about what I'm bringing up.
You go ahead.
I have a question about like the viability of the project if we don't get a big piece of it, right? If they give us a percentage of it, or what that might look like. What's your perspective on like what's the viability point and where we can make that up if we don't receive it?
Yeah,
Especially since it's doubled since our last
Right.
conversation.
You know, there's a chance they could fund a portion of the ask amount or the requested amount. We could always look at it as just the solar panels and the initial approximately 900,000. With the credits, remember that brought it down to around 510,000 possibly, somewhere in that range. So, you know, I think we could look at options depending on what comes through, if any, you know, grant money.
So, and my comments are they are related to that. So depending on how much grant money comes through, and I'm sorry, I should have prefaced this. So Mayor Pro Tem Shamro and I sat down with Brandy Ekren last week and had a good conversation about this, and I apologize for last Monday not having it straight in my head to share, I was going on, but not being clear about what my concerns were. So I'll back up even more. So we as a city are already 100% renewable electricity, including the wastewater treatment plant. So adding solar panels to the wastewater treatment plant when we're already 100% renewable, what does that mean? How does that work? It can work. But part of what it means is that we're still going to be 100% renewable. If we don't get enough grants or outside funding on this project, we're paying more to be 100% renewable. So we can think of it, we're 100% renewable now through different mechanisms. We're going to still be 100% renewable, but if the grants and other funding sources don't come through to certain levels, we might have to pay more to be this type of 100% renewable with panels on the wastewater treatment plant. And we, as a body, or 6 of us plus somebody else, might decide that that's worth it. We're willing to pay whatever. We have to wait and see what that premium is going to be. We're happy to pay that premium over the next 20 years to have the visibility, because it's marketing, and marketing is important too. I mean, that's how we rationalize doing the panels up on M72.
And the original wind turbine.
And the original wind turbine up there as well. So I don't want to say no, it's not going to happen, but that kind of plays then into the question of Commissioner Walter, that if not all the funding comes through, well, that just means that premium that we'd be asking ourselves and the city to pay maybe is a bit larger, and maybe we scale back or whatever it might be. So with all that said, that's kind of like from last week and what I should have been able to say but couldn't articulate. Our meeting with Brandy Ekren was excellent. And she brought up the idea of the storage, because to Light and Power, the again, it's not been in front of the whole board, but at least for Ms. Ekren, myself, and Amy, we feel like we have enough solar panels that show, hey, we're working toward 100% renewable, like the demonstration project of just solar panels. What we don't have is storage. Like, that's a valuable pilot project, solar coupled with storage. So this is novel, and this could get, back to that like premium that might need to be paid, this could get the Light and Power Board interested to say, oh, yeah, we want to see how this works. It's an opportunity to run this in our community locally, gain experience as we try to do more of it. And so should there be a premium, we might have a partner to help us address that premium. Sorry, very long answer.
Yeah. But I think that was the question we were trying to ask last week. Is there a partner here with us? And you found out there is. A potential
it's likely.
partner.
Adding the storage really should increase the interest of the Light and Power Board, but I'm only one member of 7 there.
Well, we've got 2 out of 7.
2 out of 7. But from our experience with the other 5, I think there's a very good chance, and Ms. Ekren could speak to that if she chooses to, but we as a body have been very supportive of, call it pilot projects, like trying something such as this storage, and with the climate action plan currently in the works, this could dovetail quite well with that.
And I think we got to the question that was out there. I thank you, ma'am, for your participation or your willingness to seek that participation. So that's
Just a follow-up on the storage idea, and Commissioner Werner, you mentioned, the opportunity, kind of looking at it as a pilot, the storage piece of it, and that would be interesting to Traverse City Light and Power to use that to inform further projects. So would Traverse City Light and Power be the one monitoring it and studying it, or is this part of the contract with Jacobs, the battery and storage piece, or is that yet to be determined? Because that wasn't part of our original agreement.
I think that's yet to be determined, but I see Marty leaning forward.
Right, it is yet to be determined, and we were talking about behind the meter in terms of the solar collection on the panel portions. But certainly, we've always looked at Light and Power as a partner to this. And when I say a partner, is share the information and candidly get the advice that we're getting. We appreciated that and the input.
And again, like, not knowing the exact details of how this could play out, but with storage, that's valuable information to be learned for Light and Power. So, whereas if it's just solar panels, Light and Power likely is like, great, go do your solar panels, have fun. But with storage, there are opportunities to learn, and so certainly there'll be staff likely involved should it be approved.
And do you want to add anything?
Yes.
It may help to bring clarity.
Yeah, and I do know this. Good evening. It's good to see all of you. I'm Brandy Ekren. I'm the Executive Director for Light and Power. I'm very happy to support the exploration and the endeavor with respects to putting some on-site generation as well as a technology demonstration with the project. I did want to talk to a couple things, just for clarity. Maybe what I'll do is I'll reserve one comment just to talk a little bit about what happens if we don't get all of the grant for this particular application. I want to reserve an opportunity to touch on that. But just keep in mind, as with any other customer that's doing any type of on-site generation, whether we enter into a behind-the-meter arrangement or an in-front-of-the-meter arrangement, it still interconnects into our distribution system, your distribution system. So there will be an opportunity to monitor how it's going, how it's doing. It's just inherent in just how things work. So I hope that answers the one particular question in terms of, yes, absolutely. What happens, and I know obviously this is not the scope of my particular application, but what happens if we don't get all of the funding for this particular project? I would be remiss in not pointing out that this is a once-in-a-life opportunity for our industry. What you are being influenced. And when I say once in a lifetime opportunity, meaning this is not the only grant opportunity that's coming down the pipe. This is one, the timelines come up really fast, and being able to have somebody on board to help you put that package together gets us a step further. If we're only successful with a part of it, that doesn't mean we can't reapply or there is an application. What I have shared is that Light and Power plans on pursuing grant opportunities as well, and keeping in mind the partner with the city. And so, my thought is that we need to leverage a lot of what's coming down and it's available right now. This is one opportunity, but we need, I think, being able to have that support with which is dealing with your question before you today, I think is absolutely critical, and at least allows us to start moving forward with those timelines and those deadlines. So I hope I at least answered a couple of those questions. I was getting a little anxious, sorry.
For me, you answered the major question that came up last week, so thank you. For me, so, which was affirmative. Okay. Yes.
Yes, again, dealing with if we get part of the money, since we're applying for, at this point, both solar panels and the storage, so generation and batteries. If we get part of that money, are we then obligated to have both, or can that be okay, we can fully install the solar panels in our initial array, but we don't have any money for the batteries, so we'll just do part of it like that?
I can't really speak to, I think, your specific governance process in terms of your authorization. My thought would be you move forward with the application, you get what you can get, and then come back, revisit to be able to apply for more. That's what I am deducting, but I may be speaking out of turn, though, in terms of process.
Okay. Time is quick, so we need to enter into this motion. I think I'll read one for tonight just for the fun of it. That the competitive bidding process be waived and the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute an out-of-scope agreement with Jacobs in the amount not to exceed $58,971. I'll leave the 95 cents out. $71 to prepare a full grant application to the Michigan Public Service Commission Low Carbon Energy Infrastructure Enhancement and Development Grant for possible funding to purchase and install a solar system with battery backup at the Traverse City TCR WWTP. Such agreement is subject to its substance by the city manager and is formed by the city attorney with funds available in the sewer fund, and further that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute all necessary documents to apply for and receive said grant.
One thing I'd like to add to that, just because of the clarification made tonight, is that it's for up to $2 million, and of course, it's for battery storage.
Battery storage, well, that's what I said.
Yep.
Close.
Yeah, that's what you heard? I thought.
Okay.
See,
Yeah,
my
I
man-
heard that.
my wingman.
Translation, right?
I'll go ahead and make that motion.
Second.
Also, I do have one clarifying question. Is TCR WWTP actually an abbreviation at that point?
I know, I've never seen that before. That's
Traverse
a new
City
one.
Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility.
Right.
It is officially what it's called.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I said, is it actually an abbreviation at that point, because there's some others.
That was tough. We got a motion, a second. Anyone else like to address this question?
Sorry, just for clarity, excuse me, who made the motion?
I did.
You did, and
technically.
who seconded the motion? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're letting Ashley load up the meeting here for our last meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
I got it all right on the first read, too.
I got it.
Nice job.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much for the efforts.
I meant to say this on the last issue, but it applies here, too. Commissioner Warner, I'd appreciate if we didn't have printouts next time of
Do what?
of our environmental policy decision-making tools.
We did kind of chuckle at the irony, but thank you.
It's recyclable paper.
No respect.
Takes away resources.
Okay. Item under new business, item 1 was pulled from the agenda. Next, we got a Consideration to adopt a resolution approving the recommendation for Marty to appoint Jana.
We do, excuse me, have one more item remaining under old business. It's the goals and objectives discussion.
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead. We got the goals and objectives. You'll have to excuse me as I tried to read your charts. I got lost, but that's okay. You'll explain it to me.
Mr. Colburn, did you want to introduce it, or would you like me to speak to it?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just lost my place on my.
Yeah, so essentially I included two versions of the chart. One was, a little bit harder to read, but trying to represent the information that was shared from commissioners in response to this survey. But essentially what this is a follow-up to the goals and objectives that the commission adopted earlier this year. This fall, the City Commission started discussing the possibility of establishing some action points to specifically move forward those goals and objectives. And so a survey was sent out to the Commission with 12 different action points that were adopted by the Commission. And so the results of that survey are included in the packet. But to unpack it just a touch and quickly, and I did mention this in my memo, that from the survey there is significant support, of course, to prioritize the housing and homelessness category. And I want to say, when I say that I'm not suggesting that your other goals and objectives are not very important to this group. But from the results of the survey, there was a majority of the respondents that greatly prioritized housing and homelessness. And 4 action points, which include expanding modifications to the zoning ordinance for more housing opportunities. The second item is developing other city-owned parcels for housing. The third is exploring a charter amendment for an inclusive housing millage, and also the creation of a housing fund, inclusive housing fund. And then finally, host study sessions to explore topics related to housing and homelessness. So those key areas rose to the top for the greatest number of those that responded. And so tonight, if the commission's prepared to do that or wants to do that given the hour, you could discuss this a little bit more. And I'm happy to expand upon what we saw in the results of the survey. But really, it's up to the commission. And I just want to mention too, as I indicated in my memo, that while the city manager has certainly been very aware of the action points being contemplated because he provided context to several of them, he didn't, of course, see the results of the survey and probably hasn't gone through them on his first day back. So that's it.
I did want to make comment on one part of it. One of the things that I have been stressing very strongly to staff is to be taking a look at climate change and how that evolves into it. Whatever project they're working on. And I think I'd reported out to you recently that one of the struggles that some of the staff is having is how does climate change actually interface with what they're doing? And so we're looking at how we research and train our staff on that. I'm actually working with Jacobs. They have a member of their staff that's an expert in this particular field. And we think that that's an important element of understanding. Recently, almost 3 weeks ago now, I had a meeting with U of M, and we had about a dozen different cities involved and engaged. A couple of things there that I noted was I was the only city manager. The other cities had planners. I think there were 2 people that actually work in the field of resiliency. I asked them specifically, Ann Arbor was one of them, by the way, how many do they believe are higher resiliency experts in the field statewide? They think cities it's less than 10. So it's one of the areas that I'm going to be inquiring a little deeper into as to how that might evolve with city staff. But coincidentally, we just hired a staff member with the planning department since Caitlin moved over to the village manager of Kingsley, and she happens to have a master's degree in this field. So I'm going to start looking at how we can utilize some of her knowledge base on this as well. But going back to is we identified through this group through U of M that this is something that's not unique to us, but statewide. As a matter of fact, I'm proud to say that to some degree we're ahead of many cities, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop. We have to keep pushing and driving on. But it's an area that I think we need to focus on training and education.
Well, mine's specific to that, but go ahead. if yours is
Mine was
too.
2 weeks, and
Well,
might be the
okay,
same, we'll see.
So, I reached out, so thank you, Marty, and my follow on to that. And I reached out to several people in the past couple weeks, like local folks that are working in climate or climate adjacent fields, some for-profit, some nonprofit. And the idea was recommended to me when I was talking about city staff as well as the city commission. The idea was suggested that for us to consider having somebody from Governor Whitmer's Michigan Healthy Climate Plan come speak to us at a study session, maybe in February. I believe there's somebody that lives in Northport that's part of that. And then use that as a jumping off point, and maybe the metrics that the state is using for then us as a city, kind of those categories. Okay, what categories is the state looking at? What categories can we look at? What are their metrics if it's by certain, by 2040, by 2050, and what could we potentially be doing? Not that we're making decisions, but just to start to form a framework for this city commission, because it can be quite overwhelming to all of our actions through the lens of climate change. And same for staff, and hopefully staff could participate in that study session as well. Again, it's a jumping off point, just to then lead into other conversations and then maybe more specifics from there. I think everybody's probably seen those lists, like as a homeowner, what can I do as an individual to reduce my carbon footprint? ABC, I think New York Times even had an article this past week in it, and they put it out there kind of a quiz because there's some misunderstandings that, like, say, recycling has a big impact, and it's actually a very, very low impact. But if you reduce the amount of air travel you do in a year, that's a huge impact. So there's different things. It's just for us and the public and staff, like everybody, to understand what are all those levers, because we can't pull them all, but what are some of the key levers we can be pulling?
Yeah, and I'll just, since you brought that up, I'll say I like the idea of bringing somebody from Governor Whitmer's task force, especially if they're local, it's even better. But I was also just going to point out that I appreciate all of the discussion or the ideas that were mentioned by the city manager, but also that we have tasked the Green Team with examining our policies and looking at how they see ways to improve our overall departmental policies. And that we've kind of given them through March, till the end of March to do that. So I'm still think that that's going to be a way for us to zero in on that too. I don't think that any of these are bad to pursue, but before we kind of just reminding everybody of what we've got going too, so we're not throwing 8 different things out and kind of becoming redundant. And then the other question I had, and I don't want an answer for that right now, but I guess I'm hearing the experience that we have in the new planning assistant. Are we looking at potentially restructuring that role to take full advantage of that expertise?
We've just started having, I met her this morning.
That's why I said it. Well, that's why I said, hold on. That's why I said I didn't expect an answer today. I just would like a follow-up down the line.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for a report,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's very
excited.
exciting. That's why I would like to know down the line.
Do we need to, our hour's getting late, we want to, can we bring this back? I mean, we know that housing is up there. We all recognize it. There are some great opportunities that are going to come down, hopefully sooner as it relates to pilots and some other topics as it relates to that we're going to have to dig into, and someone's going to have to dig into them. Can we bring this back at a study session when, I would say, like at the end of January when we have that one, all of us are going to be here and give our newest member a time to look at this also, and we can dive into it a little bit more. A curious question is, what would have happened if we had put your numbers through here in your
Ranked choice voting? Well,
Yeah.
that's a $50 million question.
Maybe we can send it out ahead of the study session.
Can you create one?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Just for the fun. I mean, you got them.
Yeah, it won't be anonymous, of course, for transparency reasons, but we can certainly do that.
It'd just be fun to see how it came out. Yes.
So I really appreciated seeing this, and to me, it's similar in a way to last week. Was it last week we interviewed? Whenever that was. There was
Last
a Wednesday
week.
when we interviewed. And I shared this with the city clerk and the city attorney in an email. I found that process very rewarding. Like, I came away from that evening just like, wow, that was amazing. I even put in there, like, can we do this every 6 months? Like, to me, it felt like a team building thing. Like, I haven't been to many team buildings, obviously, but it was very positive because it was feedback from self-selected, I get it, members of the public, but they were still members of the public. And they had to respond on the spot to these questions we were throwing at them. And at the same time, it gave me like insight by the questions everybody else was asking, like what's front of mind for my colleagues. And so I just found it very rewarding. And what's in front of us right here is kind of similar in that sense. Like it helps me understand what others are thinking, because we don't often really get the opportunity to share, like stepping way back, hey, what's going on, what's important. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So can we do, and put this back in there, and you got the rank, just be interesting, just once again, it's data, it's information, and we can dive into it a little thicker. For those that didn't get around to completing it, is it still too late for them to add?
No.
Okay, if you do it in the next couple of weeks, maybe they can be added in, those that didn't get it completed if they would like to. That way it's just a couple more in there, so just complete it, so. Given the time, is that okay with everybody? No, Ashley, you don't have to come.
I already did. I already did my.
No, your results will remain in there because they were legitimate at the time, so there you go.
Well, I would just jump in and say we started this process at the beginning of the year for a 2-year plan, and now we're going to move it to the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering at this point, like, what's the goal with setting these goals? Is it mostly for staff direction? Because you only have then, 10 months of the year left, and there's an election, it's an election year, and I'm just wondering, like, how much more time do you spend on this? Like, what are you trying to get out of it? And how, what's that really going to change about the work that's done in the next year? I'm just
a lot of us, when it started, we laid out a list of things that were happening right now, master planning and all that. These are work that's going on. We were trying to find 2 or 3 more areas that if people and staff had time that they can work on. And I think housing is the top one. So we're trying to get it down to, if you had the time, whatever, we can do that. We already knew what everybody else was trying to get done. And now this is what we're trying to get to, and I think we've got, housing still remains the very top item, and we've got some ideas of what we'd like to see happen as that continues down the path. That's the way I took it when you brought that up with the Planning Commission, when we had that joint meeting with them back in August.
Well, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, to be honest, I think that Commissioner Walters' point hits on something that we did bring up when this all came through, and I guess this is a good opportunity to repeat it, and we probably should repeat it over and over, that I think that this is a lesson that we probably start too broad. We kind of all are agreed on what are the big topics, and we really need to drill into the smaller ones next time. And I say we, my term ends, so I might not be part of anything in the future, but every time we do these, we probably need to start on a little more of a drilled down level than the broad one.
I think we had this big, we probably should have,
well, we should have said, we kind of, the past few years have always been these high level, what comes under it.
Well, it also was a time when we had a turnover of the majority of the board, which doesn't always happen in an election. And this essentially reevaluating the goal-setting process halfway through the 2-year lets us take a more refined look that maybe going forward that is closer to where we start from in these goal settings.
But they're pretty much the same ones as the previous years.
Yeah.
So, I just would discourage continued conversation and more action on some of the higher level goals that we keep talking about, and we are making progress on. Look at the things that we talked about tonight. We know where our priorities are. So I would just discourage way too much more conversation going into the new year.
It'd just be interested to make sure we're all still in the same wavelength, but I'm kind of tired right now. And
feels like we are.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. Thanks for everyone, and thanks for your comments. Okay. With that, under new business, like I said, item 1 has been removed from the agenda. Item number 2, we need to adopt a resolution to appoint Jana Robinson as interim treasurer and finance director. So, Marty, if you want to do something, but this is your recommendation.
Certainly,
that we need
yes.
to move forward.
Jana has been with us now for about a half a year. But we are losing our finance director. He's taken a role with a private company. So we are initiating the process immediately in regard to the search. We do need to obviously conduct day-to-day business. And so it's our recommendation to proceed forward with the Deputy City Treasurer, Jana Robinson, as she's already part of the organization, understands and can represent properly the city until we can. Basically, I've got to be able to pay the bills.
Small detail.
Okay, before I do this, I'll ask the attorney, is there any reason I can't put these two together?
Well, one has to occur before the other because
Oh, 'cause we
Jana
have to-
is
okay.
then as
There we go, that's why it's
treasurer
late.
recommending
That's why it's
the
late.
other.
Okay, then I'll make the motion that the resolution approving City Manager Colburn's appointment of Jana Robinson as interim city treasurer finance director be adopted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Does anyone want to speak to this? Most of the people that are out there will definitely want this to happen so they can get paychecks. Okay, that the resolution, okay, all those in favor of the resolution say aye. Or the motion.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Thank you. The other one is.
And I'll just make the other one, the
Related.
motion. Do you want me to just make it?
Please.
Make the motion that the resolution approving interim city treasurer finance director's appointment of Brian Postma as interim deputy city treasurer finance director be adopted.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Anyone want to make it? Okay, they don't. Good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay, good. Okay, we have no appointments to make. You see your reports and announcements. We have one reserved public comment. Is Stacy Holtkamp here? Okay, please.
Patience Osage.
Okay.
My name is Stacy Holkamp. I do not reside in Traverse City, but I work in Traverse City. Do you still need my address?
You're good to go, thank you.
Can I actually ask Stacy, can you kind of yell at us because the heat's on and so it's a little loud over here with the
Okay,
furnace?
I'll try to talk up. I'm kind of losing my voice.
Oh, no.
My children shared a cold with me a couple days ago, and it's hanging out. I recently took over managing the 7-Eleven on 14th Street. And it's proven to be a bigger task than I realized. A lot of it has to do with the homeless population living in the Pines, as they refer to it as. And I know that there are things happening and that people are working, trying to resolve some of the issue. I wanted to make sure that you understand the gravity of some of the issues that I have personally experienced since I've taken over this establishment and business. All of the other businesses in that area are currently having issue as well. I don't know that any of them have addressed you guys. I call the police on the regular, who show up and do their jobs very well. It is not solving the problem. I know that we're working on housing. This has been enlightening. I enjoyed the meeting. I learned some things. However, there are a certain part of that population that don't belong in a jail, and they don't belong in housing. They cause trouble. There are drugs going on behind my building. They are defecating and rubbing it all over buildings. They harass some of the teenagers that come into my store unattended. I have issue football games. I had several groups of children come in talking about how they were afraid to walk out of my building because of the people standing outside of it and what was said to them on their way in. I would appreciate maybe some consideration. You guys were talking about using land and doing things to help this city and this community. And I think it would benefit us to come up with some kind of establishment for the folks who are not helpable, which sounds horrible, but they need a different kind of help. They don't want the help, first of all. They don't want to be in jail either. I have trespassed several of them. I have had my life threatened on multiple occasions. I had one come in and threaten to scalp one of my 18-year-old employees. I have lost employees because of the population that comes into my store. And I know that everybody around me is struggling as well. I don't know why we ever closed the state hospital. I've lived here a really long time. I currently live in Benzie County and was not aware of how bad it has gotten in that particular area of our city. And I don't know that any of you are aware either. I deal with it on the daily, and it's scary. I have a really hard time keeping employees at the moment, which is already difficult in the climate we're in. A lot of people are struggling with employees. Mine is accelerated with such, I'm kind of not a quitter, and I'm a little bit hardcore. So I deal with it, and I call the police, I trespass them, and I call the police again. I have concern. I filed for a FOIA. I have a thick sheets of assaults, rapes, weapon charges. And I would like to say to you that my biggest concern is the fact that I am surrounded by schools and children that come into my store on the regular, who aren't attended always with adults. Some of them drive, some of them don't, but they're all young. And they're all intimidated, and they're all scared on occasion when they're met with certain folks outside my store. So I don't know what you know, and I don't know what the whole plan is, but consideration on some level of somewhere for these folks to go who need more help than just housing. They need, maybe regulation of drugs that they're addicted to, or some mental health. I mean, mental health is a huge issue. And I would hope that we're addressing it to the best of our ability, and maybe we could use some of this land or some of these open buildings. I know you're throwing money at it. I also know it's against city ordinance for them to be living in those pines. And I don't think it's a very good spot. I know everybody keeps saying to me, well, if they're not there, where should we put them? I don't have a necessarily straightforward answer, but I don't think where they're at right now in that particular area is a very good area. When we're having weapons charges and they walk around with machetes, I know of several instances. I talk to them on the daily. I know them by name. I help some of them that are kind, and I don't help the others that aren't. But I worry about them going into a school. I worry about them attacking some of the children that are outside my store. I worry about it being a bigger problem, and I would like to keep it from being that bigger problem. And I hope that you can help. They need help. I need help. And it would be nice if we could maybe address that little area that's not maybe being addressed, because it's a problem. It's a big problem. There are lots of businesses that I've had conversations with around me that are also having a lot of problems. And I don't know if anybody's doing anything about it. I guess that's all I have to say. I was told that you could give comment back to me because I petitioned to talk to you this way. If you have some insight for me at all, I would welcome it. I know some of you come into my store.
One individual that has, in the last year, has worked more closely with it than I have in the past. I understand. And we've got a police chief back here that also understands, and we have an officer that is in place to help understand. We know there are issues, and we're going to keep working on them. We've now found a way to put folks be into day shelters. We have a social worker that is out there trying to work with them, getting them to the help they can. We are trying to work on a way to where we are out of business. We hear you. I don't have a great answer, but here's the chief, and
him and
and
I
he
had
knows
a
it.
little bit of a conversation, and like I said, I speak with the police officers on the regular basis. I think they all know me by name at this point. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware, and that maybe we could get them out of there, because I just don't think it's a good place for them to be.
Jeff O'Brien, currently assigned as the chief of police, and I did have an occasion to speak with Ms. Holcamp. She reassured me that we are utilizing the trespassing laws, so if someone arrives at the 7-Eleven, they're creating disturbance or put on a trespass, they're given a warning by the manager, the proprietor, and then it's an arrest situation the next time they show up. One of the conflicts that we have is with the reforms in the state of Michigan, there's really there's no bond issue anymore. And so generally people are sobering up and then they're exiting out of jail real quick and then they go back. So this morning, I wrote the county commission board. There were two entities that were on the ARPA funds. One of them was Addiction Treatment Services, and the other one was the Coalition for Mental Health. I'm trying to remember. That coalition has been active for several years to get some type of a regional, local mental health facility that no matter what your insurance status is, you can go in there and you can get help. So through our social worker, we've formed partnerships with Community Mental Health. We formed partnerships with Addiction Treatment Services. Also with this group here that I'm particularly talking about. We also have Safe Harbor, Goodwill. We've placed a community police officer in that location with the social worker. And we're looking at a quick response team as to a multidisciplinary team that includes social work, it includes police officer, it includes community mental health, all these entities that we can sit down and try to fast track these individuals into assistance. ETS, and I hesitate on saying these things publicly because we haven't really inked a deal yet or an MOU, but they've agreed to give us 2 beds for any type of substance use disorder or mental health. We can take them down to community mental health. So these are all things that are in the process. We're looking at January, the first part of the year, to ink those MOUs. I just got to tell you that Jen Campbell, our police social worker, is just doing a phenomenal job of trying to get these resources. And you know, Mr. Colburn, we are really dependent on our nonprofit agencies in this community to help us, to assist us with solutions. That's where we're at. And the city attorney, she definitely can talk to the laws and the constitutionality of taking someone that is homeless and throwing them in jail. And I will say this, and you have my assurance, that we will deal with the behavior. The issue of homelessness is a condition, it's not a crime. But the behavior we'll deal with. You call us 100 times, we'll be there. She assured me she's going to get cameras. We'll investigate those. Any type of MDOP, public urination, defecation, assault and battery, we will do what we have to do. We will get warrants or we will make an arrest. We will deal with the behavior. So hope that helps. Sure.
Ma'am, you need to talk into the mic because folks we can hear you pretty well, but folks at home cannot.
Okay. Like I said, he has been amazing. All the police staff have been amazing. They show up and they do their jobs very professionally. That is not my problem or my worry. It's more of are we handling all of the problem and getting the help that they need and looking at it on a whole level and doing something quickly? Because it's definitely a huge problem. And there's been some really scary scenarios. And I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware. And that we could, you know, I'm open to helping. I just, something needs to be done about it pretty quick, because it's bad. I didn't realize how bad it was, living in Benzie County in the woods. It's kind of scary.
I understand. I truly understand it. It feels like right now we are the only governmental agency, it feels like it, that are trying to work on it. So we'll keep at it. But thank you. Make sure he's on super speed dial, because they will be there.
They come every time I call them. They're very quick.
Thank you.
Yes, you did make reference to people walking around with machetes. I'd like to personally apologize if that was me. Considering I am a Parks and Rec Commissioner, I work with Invasive Species Network and other organizations. I have done, participated in work bees and done invasive species removal, and that does involve walking around brandishing axes, saws, and indeed machetes. So
right.
that does happen, and it doesn't necessarily mean hostile or dangerous intent.
No, it doesn't. There are certain entities over there that it does, though, and they went after each other, and there's been hospital visits, and, you know, it's not the actual weapons, it's the people holding them that worry me sometimes. Regular people walking around with machetes or whatever, I own one, I'm not worried about that. It's the ones that come in and threaten my life with them that worry me.
Day walking down Division.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you guys for your time and everything that you do.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Keep us aware. We appreciate it. Okay. Open for general public comment.
Ryan Hannon, 2279 South Airport Road West. I wanted to comment, I appreciate Ms. Holtkamp waiting all this time and coming here and sharing with us. And one thing that COVID has done is really brought to light a lot of the things and problems people experiencing homelessness are going through. And we certainly know the issues that are going on. We're really appreciative of the city and the supportive stance that they take and the resources they're pouring in to help, not only with the quick response team, with the social worker and the community police officer. I'm part of that team, and it's just getting started working together to identify the gaps that are out there, the safety net we're creating, if you will, to be able to further help people. And I appreciate the stance that the city doesn't take to criminalize homelessness, certainly addressing behavior, looking at the resources that need to be had and the needs that need to be met. But when the city is kind of the end result of other townships that criminalize homelessness, it's often not fair for the city to take the brunt of that, but you all are responding in the proper way, looking at housing. We know that supportive housing works, and the chief alluded to the ARPA dollars that are being proposed, and there's a lot of support to try to get the mental health wellness center up and running, support the ATS, and supportive housing projects in the area to alleviate this. We also know we have 2 homeless shelters in our area. Both are not completely full, yet we still have people out unsheltered, and we know in the summertime, half of our shelter space goes, I would say more than half of our shelter space goes unused because of the operations that we have currently right now. So our response as a community isn't fully meeting it there. I appreciate the city working on that, and as we go forth to try to engage other entities to continue to alleviate this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other general public comment? Thank you very much. Anything from the mayor and commissioners? First of all, everyone have a very happy holiday season. All those that are traveling or your relatives that are traveling, please be safe, return home safe. We'd like to see everybody back. And Ms. Walter, Thank you again for your service to the city. It's going to be fun watching you on the upper level. We'll be there to harass you once in a while, just to keep you honest.
Please do.
We will, so we appreciate that.
We'll probably have a joint meeting about the senior center at some point.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's another topic.
With any luck, we will.
That's another topic, so we'll take it from there.
Well, on that note, because kind of said for public comment, and then we went to thanks, so I feel bad following this up with that, but last meeting Wednesday, as was referenced, it seems like a blur, but it was just a few days ago. We're all kind of a little slap happy at the end of the meeting, but I did want to take a moment to say thank you to everybody who applied, but also our final three candidates. We went through the decision process, and it was very appreciated of everybody who applied, but especially to acknowledge that though we had to pick one, people rose to the top for a reason, and we appreciated the extra time they took. And to Commissioner Wilson's question of why didn't you run last time, we hope to see some of the people on the ballot. So I just wanted to throw that in as we wish a fond farewell to Commissioner Walter in this regard, but
Yes,
she won't be rid of us yet.
Great.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, there's cherry pie over here to be eaten and some cookies to be eaten before we left. Jim, don't go
It's
to
time.
sleep on you yet.
Time for second dinner.
Unless y'all just want to stay here until the new year, this meeting is hereby adjourned.
I know, I was like, okay, stop.